Every pop culture fan has experienced that sense of emptiness when an amazing movie comes to an end. Just think about the universes of The Lord of the Rings or Toy Story. We want to know what happens after the credits roll, how the characters deal with real-world problems. And when we talk about franchises that left their mark on cinema, How to Train Your Dragon is the perfect example. The friendship between Hiccup and Toothless changed history, but what the movie skipped over was the day-to-day struggle of actually making that piece work. That's exactly the gap today's marathon is here to fill. The animated saga that brings together Riders of Berk, Defenders of Berk, and Race to the Edge. Basically the official bridge of the franchise. But don't go expecting some silly little cartoon. The story starts with the absolute chaos of trying to domesticate giant reptiles in the village and escalates into epic wars against insane hunters, forcing the whole gang to grow up the hard way. And the biggest lesson of this journey is clear. The real battle begins after the happy ending. That's why, today on the channel, the animated saga of How to Train Your Dragon. The new life in Berk seems like a dream, with dragons and Vikings sharing the same space, until the wild beasts act like, well, wild beasts, turning the village into chaos.
Stop it, pesky dragon! Dragons!
Get off my roof, you pest!
Let go of that! These are my apples!
Enter Mildew, that bitter neighbor who hates anything new. With his cabbage patch devoured by Grunkles, he incites a riot demanding the beast be caged. Hiccup asks Stoic for a chance, but the training yields a literal shower of dragon poop at 3 in the afternoon, and Stoic caves to the pressure, banishing the beasts the next morning. At the farewell dinner comes the epiphany. Instead of forcing the dragons to be well-behaved pets, use their instincts in the village's favor. Stormfly plows the cabbage field, Meatlug fertilizes the soil, Hookfang scares the fish right into the nets, and months of work turn into minutes. Stoic tries to keep his tough guy facade, but there's no way around it. He hands the old kill arena over to the kids, and the Berk Dragon Training Academy is born. Chaos finally has an official address. Peace is great for the village, but terrible for Gobber's business. Without dragons to hunt, he tries to sell deadly weapons as household utensils. Hiccup convinces Stoic to use the old man for diplomacy, except the blacksmith's diplomacy involves handing out maces to farmers fighting over sheep and sinking a ship while trying to fix it. At the academy, things aren't any better. A wrecking ball on the loose, sheer panic, and Stoic ends up firing his friend, who takes the blow saying he can live without a job, just like he lives without 2 limbs. Redemption comes when Hookfang goes berserk in the plaza, breathing fire everywhere, and Stoic calls Gobber in for the dirty work. But the blacksmith sees what no one else did. The dragon isn't crazy, he's suffering from a massive toothache. He pries that jaw open by force and pulls the rotten tooth out with his bare hands, discovering his true calling right there, Berk's first dragon dentist. The farm animals are so terrified of the giant reptiles that they've stopped giving milk and laying eggs. The bucket on Bucket's head, a bizarre but strangely accurate weather radar, tightens, warning of a brutal blizzard. Hiccup and Astrid cause an avalanche while racing and only avoid freezing in a snow trench because Toothless and Stormfly improvise a thermal tent with their wings and fire. Stoic issues an ultimatum. Either the beasts get over their fear before the storm hits or everyone starves. The tactics fail. Fishlegs crawls around imitating a sheep, and the harmless egg explodes in their faces. When the blizzard arrives early, trapping the whole village in ice, the dragons repeat their trick. They form a circle, spread their wings against the wind, and breathe a gentle fire onto the ground. Toothless gently nudges a shivering little sheep inside, and Berk wakes up to chickens sleeping peacefully next to giant beasts. Fishlegs get stuck in the branches of a tree, and Hiccup's solution is a weak plasma blast from Toothless, which frees his friend but takes his pants along with him. But the flight pays off. He swears he saw a flaming squirrel in the woods. It's not a squirrel, of course. It's a baby dragon. Hiccup takes the little guy home. Stoic names him Torch, and Toothless is not thrilled. The newbie steals his food, takes his bed, and his rider only sees silly jealousy. Meanwhile, a giant, furious version of the species is burning down the forest looking for her baby, and Toothless tries to warn him in every way possible. It's like screaming at a horror movie protagonist not to go down into the basement. Hiccup even grounds Toothless in the cove, and it's only when a Typhoomerang advances on Berk, destroying everything, that it finally clicks. He runs to apologize, and the two lure the mother away using Torch as bait in a dive the giant can't match. A hard-learned lesson. Trust between a dragon and rider goes both ways. That trust is quickly put to to the test. During training, Snotlout loses control of Hookfang and destroys Mildew's roof, the biggest dragon hater on the island, and Stoic orders Hiccup to fix the mess to sweep it under the rug. The headache gets worse, because that same night, all the boots in the village go missing, and hideous zippleback footprints appear around the crime scene. The Great Hall is found slashed to pieces the next morning, and things spiral completely out of control when the armory gets blown sky high in the dead of night, with witnesses swearing they saw Toothless leaving the scene. Left with no choice, Stoic decrees the banishment of all dragons to Dragon Island. Hiccup says a heartbroken goodbye, but his brain won't shut off. Mildew knew exactly where Toothless was during the explosion, which is impossible from the side of the island where the old man lives. Something smells fishy. Pretending to fix the roof, he breaks into the house and finds a complete fraud kit, boots carved into paw prints and sharp claws tied to sticks. But before he can take the evidence to his dad, the grumpy old man tosses it all into the bottom of the ocean. With the evidence at the bottom of the sea and Burke stripped of its weapons, the stage is perfectly set for Alvin the Treacherous, who hears of a certain dragon conqueror and invades the island in the dead of night to kidnap the guy, never imagining the legendary warrior is Hiccup himself. The outcasts take hostages on the beach, Astrid attempts a surprise attack that doesn't quite pan out, and Hiccup turns himself in to save his friends. He plays the strategist, owning the title with confidence, and convinces Alvin to take him to Dragon Island to show off his supposed power. There, he reunites with Toothless and puts on quite a show. He fakes a deadly fight with the Night Fury while, hidden by the dragon's wings, he just straps on the saddle. In the blink of an eye, he mounts, takes off, and leaves Alvin looking like a total fool. The cavalry doesn't take long. The teens tear through the skies on their dragons. Stoic arrives by ship, and amidst an absurd smokescreen created by the dragons boiling the seawater with fire, the two throw hands on the deck. Stoic gets the upper hand, Alvin falls into the water, and the riders sink the outcast ship with a flawless bombing run. Back on Burke, the dragons return as heroes, and Stoic shuts Mildew up with just a glaring look, but the real danger still breathes. On the ruined island, a soaking wet Alvin watches the kids flying and has a terrifying epiphany. If those children can ride dragons, his army can too. Stoic and Gobber drag a boat destroyed by a wild dragon into the port, and Hiccup points out the basic logic. Why sail for hours if you can fly? The chief pulls out the old Viking way excuse, but changes his tune real quick when Gobber mentions that a dragon would protect Burke from the likes of Alvin. The flying lesson is a disaster, and Stoic spends the day using Toothless as a flying forklift until the beast ends up looking like he pulled a double shift. Then comes a call from the sea, a massive thunder drum shooting deafening sound waves. Stoic brawls with it on top of the ship and decides, that's the one, I want that one. Except training isn't exactly his gift. They find the beast in a cave, stealing fish to protect an injured friend, and when boars attack, Stoic drops his weapons and steps in front of both dragons. Surrounded, he finally understands what his son had been trying to teach him. He reaches out his hand, the thunder drum accepts it, and sends the boars flying with a roar. The official portrait of the chief and his son is unveiled in the Great Hall, except the painter went a little overboard on Hiccup's muscles. And the worst part isn't even the painting, it's that Stoic likes the buff version more than his actual son. Their luck changes when the kids knock over an old painting and find Hamish Thirst's treasure map, and Hiccup takes the lead on the hunt in true Goonies style, with Astrid tagging along just to make sure no one dies in the process. Riddle after riddle, they fall into a fireworm nest, where Hiccup picks the piece that reflects his own face, and the floor immediately collapses. Down below is Hamish Thirst's tomb, and the big reveal. The legendary heir was also a Hiccup, a warrior of the mind, not of muscles. In the final trap, caught between a warhammer and a writing quill, he grabs the quill, which turns out to be the only safe spot in the cave-in. Stoic apologizes for the absurd risk, and the portrait is repainted to show the real Hiccup. Trader Johann arrives in Berk, and the village goes on a Black Friday-style shopping spree, with old Mildew buying a massive shipment of cabbages. The joy is short-lived. Toothless starts sneezing non-stop, loses control of his plasma blasts, and falls from the sky, and soon the other riders' dragons drop too. Gothy diagnoses an allergy. The village throws everything they bought into a giant pit, and still, nothing improves. Hiccup puts the pieces together. Poisonous blue flowers planted right in the middle of the village, courtesy of Mildew, and highly lethal lethal to reptiles. The only cure is Scaldron venom, and Stoic makes a point of dragging the culprit along on the hunt. The beast nearly flips the boat and spits boiling water at everyone. Mildew tries to run away with a flower stuck right to his rear end. The dragon spots it, takes a clean bite, and injects the venom right where the sun don't shine. Back on Berk, Gobber is tasked with the thankless job of extracting the antidote from the old man's buttocks while the whole village listens to the screams from outside the forge, giving Mildew a painful reminder that karma never misses. Hiccup and Toothless are breaking speed records, with Stormfly hot on their tails. Astrid's secret is a chicken-based diet, but the competitive focus shifts quickly when Snotlout finds a shipwreck on the beach, and the treasure inside is a mysterious girl named Heather. She wakes up, plays the classic damsel in distress card, claiming her family was kidnapped by pirates, and the boys go into full-on competition mode to see who can play the hero better. Everyone buys her story immediately, except Astrid, whose suspicion radar goes off. Staying at Hiccup's house, Heather uses her charm to coax secrets about the dragons, and when Astrid catches her snooping through the Book of Dragons, Hiccup falls for the victim having nightmares act and defends the girl. At night, Astrid follows her and sees her talking to Savage on the beach. Heather is an outcast spy and needs the book for Alvin, but the girl is quick, slips back into bed, and pretends to be asleep. Hiccup, acting like a typical teenager blinded by a pretty face, brushes it off as just jealousy. The reality check comes the next day. Heather steals Stormfly and the book. It finally clicks, and the riders mount a frantic chase into outcast waters. Astrid jumps onto the back of her own dragon. A mid-air brawl ensues under enemy fire, and she gets Stormfly back. The problem? The book falls straight into the hands of Alvin the Treacherous. With her escape thwarted, Heather ends up in a cell on Berk, confessing that her parents are Alvin's hostages, but Astrid's trust in her is at absolute zero. On Outcast Island, Alvin is amazed by the book and discovers the hard way that theory and practice are two very different things. The writers come up with a daring plan. Astrid goes undercover, disguises herself as Heather, and infiltrates the enemy base, fooling Alvin and taming a monstrous nightmare using a brute force trick she learned by watching Snotlout. The escape plan was perfect until Alvin uses the real Heather's parents as bargaining chips. That's when the penny drops. The girl wasn't lying. Back on Berk, the real Heather knocks out her guard, makes peace with Stormfly, and flies in to help. The rescue turns into total chaos. The riders invade the island by bribing wild dragons with fish, a tactic that nearly cost Snotlout his life, as he preferred almost getting eaten to letting go of his own lunch. Hiccup walks into an ambush set by Alvin, but the cavalry arrives with Heather riding Stormfly, proving whose side she's really on. The outcasts retreat, and Alvin, in a move that defines just how insane he is, uses his own right-hand man Savage as catapult ammunition to knock Astrid out of the sky and take her hostage. The day is saved by the monstrous nightmare she had tamed minutes earlier, which knocks Alvin out and secures the book's recovery. With her parents safe, Heather says goodbye with a hug for Astrid, proving the makeshift alliance was worth it. It's time for the Thaw Fest Games, which for Hiccup has always meant one thing: being humiliated by Snotlout. Only this time the games include dragons, and the tide turns. While Snotlout and Hook Fang become an out-of-control fireball, Hiccup becomes the most insufferable winner in Berk. In the final race, however, he sees his cousin's sheer terror of disappointing his own father, fakes a slip-up, and hands over the victory on a silver platter. Stoic shows his pride, and Astrid rewards the fake loser with a kiss. Hiccup puts up metal perches for the dragons, but metal attracts lightning, and when a storm sets Berk on fire, Mildew convinces the village that Toothless is to blame, calling him the unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. The dragon ends up chained up to be banished. To prove in practice what no one accepts as science, Hiccup climbs the mast with a metal rod, but nature doesn't wait. Lightning electrocutes him prematurely, and Toothless breaks his chains to fish him out of the sea. After that, the village erects a giant statue of Thor at the highest point of the island, which by pure coincidence happens to be right next to Mildew's house. A gigantic whispering death starts sucking Berk's animals underground, and Toothless's reaction is the most terrifying part. He ignores commands and attacks with pure rage, because this beef is old and personal. That night, he flies off alone to hunt his rival and refuses everyone's help, pulling some Rocky Balboa-style stubbornness, except without being able to fly properly. Cornered on a cliff, he's only saved because Hiccup throws himself into the void on purpose. With the pilot back in the saddle, the duo blinds the monster and pins it down, but Toothless spares his rival, proving that together they are unbeatable. As Hiccup strengthens his bond with Toothless, the twins Toughnut and Roughnut regress. They fight constantly, yell conflicting commands at Barf and Belch, and end up quitting training, going their separate ways. And the timing couldn't be worse, because because Stoic is about to renew a 50-year treaty with the Berserkers, whose new chief is Dagger the Deranged, a lunatic who hates dragons and acts like a teen slasher movie villain. With 50,000 men on the other side, the order is to hide all the dragons on Berk, except hiding fire-breathing beasts is never easy. Without the twins to control them, Barf and Belch fly aimlessly and crash right into the middle of the Great Hall, blowing the secret wide open. Dagger, eyes gleaming, declares that the treaty can only be signed in dragon's blood and takes the two heads to the arena. Hiccup tracks down the twins in an isolated cave and gives it to them straight. Their dragon will die if they don't work together. At the arena, with the axe practically on the dragon's neck, the riders storm in screaming about a wild dragon attack and, using hand signals Fishlegs invented earlier, command the dragons from above to cause the perfect chaos on the ground. Dagger, overwhelmed by even a night fury, panics, flees with his fleet, and considers the treaty signed by shouting, and the twins, fueled by adrenaline, finally make up. Flying in the middle of a storm is already a terrible idea, but Snotlout makes it worse. He ignores Hiccup and flies straight into a waterspout, getting sucked into the vortex with Hook Fang. Hiccup and Toothless dive in to save him, and the price is steep. The tail fin is shredded and the trio crashes onto an uncharted island. Snotlout's gratitude is non-existent. He just complains, breaks the only metal rod that could get them back, and even eats some purple berries off the ground, reaping the karma in the form of a swollen, paralyzed tongue. The real problem is that they are on Outcast Island, and the pouch with the Birdcrest Snotlout dropped along the way becomes a gift-wrapped present for Alvin the Treacherous. At night, tensions explode when Snotlout insults Hiccup's prosthetic leg, and the two separate just in time for the outcast to capture the chief's son. Riderless Toothless tracks down Snotlout, and the unlikely duo breaks into the forge, knocks out the blacksmith, and sets out for a rescue. Just when Alvin and Savage think they finally have the Dragon Conqueror in their hands, the two show up causing a tactical avalanche. Snotlout knocks out the guards, Hiccup fixes the tail fin amidst the chaos, and they take off, leaving Alvin frustrated over losing the kids again, and heading home with a mutual respect no one saw coming. Trader Johann turns up floating in the sea, completely traumatized by a so-called fog monster. But what catches Hiccup's attention is his late mother's chest that was on that ship. At Breakneck Bog, the vibe is straight out of a horror movie. Bones falling from the sky, a ship stuck at the top of a tree, until the monster reveals itself. A swarm of smothering smoke breaths, crows obsessed with metal, and the gang only escapes the nest by throwing all their weapons behind them. Inside the chest, there is only a hand-stitched dragon doll made by his mother, which baby Hiccup, terrified of dragons, had thrown into the sea. Fishlegs skips combat class and digs up a glowing, color-changing stone on the beach, and all of Berk goes into a collective delusion over the good luck stone, with Vikings even offering their own children in exchange. Only it wasn't a stone at all, it was a changewing egg, basically a reptilian predator, invisible and spitting acid, and Snotlout had already swiped 3 others to sell. That's when Fishlegs finally loses his temper, snatches the egg by force, and returns it to the furious mothers, swearing to protect the nest with his own life. The bluff works.
I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever tries to take your eggs again. Well,
Berk is celebrating Bork Week, and Mildew is the only one who can't stomach the peace with dragons. He misses the days when everything was solved with an axe swing. Meanwhile, Hiccup notices Toothless's loneliness as the only known Night Fury, until he finds hidden notes about an Isle of Night in Bork's old archives. The Academy crew sets off to find it and comes across a cave guarded by a Changewing that decides to use Snotlout as a human yo-yo. One of those scenes where you almost feel bad for the guy, until you remember it's Snotlout. Since the archives state that Night Furies are hostile to other species, Hiccup flies to the island alone with Toothless. Upon arriving, they hear the call, spot the silhouette, and it's a wooden decoy. The island was a trap set by Alvin the Treacherous, who captures the two in seconds to force the boy to train the outcast dragon army. And Alvin's ship has a VIP passenger, Mildew, who planned the whole thing and is extremely satisfied with the chaos he just created. On Outcast Island, Alvin shows off the private zoo his men have absolutely no idea how to tame. Either Hiccup trains the beasts, or Toothless, chained up and refusing to eat, pays the price. But loyalty isn't Alvin's strong suit. He betrays Mildew and tosses the old man into the cell with Hiccup. What follows is a perfectly imperfect escape. Hiccup pops off his own metal leg to knock out a guard, and Mildew, surprisingly enough, finishes the job. While the Burke crew invades the island hidden on Trader Johan's ship, Hiccup gives the old man a crash course, calms down a deadly natter, and the two dodge the beasts Alvin released into the arena. Toothless, who had already freed himself because that's what he does, reunites with Hiccup, and Alvin throws another net over them. The day is saved by the dragons themselves, who with no riders giving commands, execute a jaw-dropping coordinated rescue. During the escape, Mildew slips, hangs from the natter's tail, apologizes, and lets go so the riders can escape. An almost heroic moment, almost, because as soon as the dragons vanish over the horizon, he gets up, dusts himself off, and goes to have a laugh with Alvin. He just wanted a private lesson on how to tame dragons, and it worked perfectly. Hiccup's capture left scars on Burke, and Stoic makes the worst possible decision for a modern Viking leader. He bans dragon flights and bets on wood and stone defenses. Hiccup hates it, and after a lot of nagging from Toothless, and getting caught red-handed by Astrid taking a midnight ride, he decides that rules are made to be broken safely. Thus, the Dragon Flight Club is born, whose first rule is, you do not talk about Dragon Flight Club. Brad Pitt would be proud. The gang trains secretly at night, studying the unpredictable attacks of the Changewings. Hypocrisy reigns on the island, as Stoic himself takes late-night strolls on the back of his dragon. Fishlegs, who had failed miserably in interrogation resistance training, gets caught flying and survives the chief's pressure by repeating only his name and address in the dark without ratting anyone out. Then Snotlout spots the outcast fleet, and Stoic and Hiccup ditch the rules to lead the counterattack. Alvin unleashes his new Changewings, but the Academy had already studied exactly how to deal with them in the dark, and the victory is sealed when father and son combine their dragon's blasts, forcing Alvin to retreat. Stoic even lifts the ban, unaware that the entire battle was a smokescreen. While the sky was on fire, Mildew and the outcasts slipped through the underground caves and planted hundreds of whispering death eggs right beneath Burke, and one of them has already started to hatch. Snotlout, with his usual empathy, blames the loss of the outcast ship on the sluggishness of Fishlegs and his dragon, who isolates herself, devastated. To cheer the beast up, he serves a feast of various rocks. The mixture doesn't sit well, and it's only when Gobber tickles her belly that she throws up some weird lava that cools into the lightest, most impenetrable metal Burke has ever seen. From useless to village hero, forging Gronkle iron for everyone. But when push comes to shove, she's out of ammo, and the desperate idea of feeding her all the rocks at once turns her into a giant magnet that runs through the village attracting everything metal. A huge problem for a guy who literally has a metal leg. Hiccup gets stuck to her and is dragged into the middle of the ocean. Fishlegs swallows his panic, mounts Toothless, and catches up to his friend right above the enemy ship, where he makes the dragon barf up the magnetic rocks, which plummet like meteors and sink everything on the spot. Far away, the outcasts reach Burke's secret cave. The planted eggs have hatched, and one of them was so gigantic it left a tunnel looking like a highway to hell. Astrid decides the riders need to toughen up and invents a training exercise on Dragon Island. Cross the island at night, without dragons and without gear, a Viking boot camp. In the woods, Hiccup bumps into Dogger at a campfire. The completely unhinged berserker leader thinks he's there hunting dragons just like him, with his main target being the Night Fury. Hiccup plays along, and the cat and mouse game gets tense when Dogger casually drops that he might have murdered his own father to take power, just to keep the mood light. Meanwhile, the dragons escape from Toughnut, and Toothless wanders straight into the villain's sights. A flare reveals an entire berserker fleet waiting on the water, and Hiccup, cornered, throws in the towel and calls his dragon, revealing that the two work together. Dogger takes the betrayal super well, trying to kill them both immediately. Hiccup then turns his shield into a crossbow, stalling the madman long enough to free Toothless, who sends the villain flying with a plasma blast. The alliance is over. Dogger declares all-out war for the heads of Hiccup and his dragon.
No! No one hurts Hiccup. No one! Except me. And not until after I have his Night Fury, and I will have it.
Burke's well dries up out of nowhere, and Snotlout, smelling an opportunity, starts selling overpriced water to his neighbors, while Hiccup goes down to investigate. The rope snaps, and he and Toothless plummet into an underground cave, finding the outcast crates and empty whispering death eggs. The hatchlings didn't leave. They dug their way to the surface and turned the village into pure chaos. As Fishlegs rightly points out, hatchlings are even worse than adults because they have no jaw control and act like flying chainsaws, until Hiccup scares them off with the sun's reflection on his his shield, since the species' eyes are overly sensitive. Then the ground explodes and a colossal mutated pure white dragon emerges from the earth. Toughnut, with his natural flair for drama, names the beast the Screaming Death, and it lives up to the name, brushing off attacks from the entire team. With no chance at using brute force, Hiccup lures the creature to the sea stacks in the ocean and, blinding the monster repeatedly with his shield, makes the giant smash into a massive column, which collapses and crushes its wing with giant boulders. Defeated, the Screaming Death retreats with the hatchlings, and the damage to the tunnels ends up redirecting the water and filling the well again. But the victory is bittersweet. Hiccup knows this species always returns to its birthplace, and the war against this monster is just beginning. Snotlout pushes Hookfang to his absolute limit because rest is for the weak, and the dragon tries to ignite himself, fails miserably, and starts shedding his scales. A Stoker-class dragon without fire is on borrowed time. On Fireworm Island, Snotlout steals a gel comb, wakes the swarm's gigantic queen, and cornered, decides to lay down his own life for his partner. But irony saves the day. The queen's venom was the exact cure. The flame returns in full force, and Snotlout cries tears of joy, blaming it on something in his eye to keep up his tough guy act. Every 10 years, the Aurora Borealis brings the Flightmare, the beast that supposedly froze Astrid's uncle in fear and ruined the Hofferson name. So she trains, thirsty for revenge, while the twins build a bunker and force Snotlout to paint chickens like rainbows to get in. In the swamp, Astrid faces the beast head-on and freezes up, but it turns out it's the mist that paralyzes the victim. Her uncle wasn't a coward, just an easy target. Once they discover the dragon follows a glowing algae river, the gang digs a canal, redirects the river to the ocean, and the monster disappears for good. While Alvin and Mildew invade Burke through the Whispering Death tunnels, the rescue training turns into an ego trip, with everyone trying to train a terrible terror in 24 hours. Snotlout, in his unique genius, teaches his to bite its own leg. Obsessed, Fishlegs ignores Meatlug, who wanders off alone and ends up getting kidnapped. The rescue mission on the outcast ship turns into an improv class, and Toothless sends the ship to the bottom of the sea, leaving Alvin and Mildew adrift with a shark on their tail. Between dragon paintball and airmail, which basically involves tying a message to a terrible terror and hoping for the best, bad news arrives. Islands are being wiped off the map because the Screaming Death has gone full kaiju and is sinking everything by tunneling underneath. Since the twins and Snotlout have the attention span of a goldfish, the trio holds off the monster alone until Fishlegs shines, summoning an army of wild gronkles and having them spit lava to seal the ground. The kaiju retreats, but it's still out there. The twins nearly lose their heads playing a staring contest with a rigged guillotine and storm off, deeply offended, to prove their worth in the forest. Toughnut falls into a trap within 5 minutes and, while hanging upside down, manages to yell tame a gigantic Typhoomerang. Torch, the hatchling Hiccup saved, is now the size of a Boeing. A single spark sets the whole dry forest ablaze, and the solution comes from the chaotic minds of the twins, fighting fire with wind and more fire. Torch spins into a whirlwind, sucking up the flames and saving Burke. Night falls with Toughnut still tied up, and Roughnut strung up right next to him in the exact same way. Bucket and Mulch are having the worst fishing day of their lives when Dogger's berserkers try to hijack their boat in the middle of the sea. Hiccup, Astrid, and Snotlout arrive just in time to chase the enemies off, only to discover the reason for the attack: a dragon frozen in a gigantic iceberg, Captain America style. Hiccup then does what protagonists do best and takes the unknown threat straight home, where Gobber and Stoic go into full panic mode. The beast is a Skrill, a brutal legend that absorbs and fires lightning and, to top it off, is the sacred symbol of Dogger's tribe. Stoic orders them to get rid of it before it sparks an all-out war, and Hiccup leaves Snotlout and the twins on guard duty. Easily the worst leadership decision of his life. Within minutes, they thaw the ice block out of sheer stupidity, and the Skrill escapes in a rage, kicking off an insane hunt in the middle of a thunderstorm, the perfect habitat for the beast to recharge its batteries. The battle devolves into absolute chaos. Snotlout takes a lightning bolt to the head and starts speaking a garbled language that, ironically, only Toughnut understands. When the Skrill fires at the exact second Toothless shoots a plasma blast into explosive gas, the shockwave knocks the electric dragon out and sends everyone flying. Dogger loses his prize, but it's no victory for Burke either. The twins, sprawled on a cliff, watch Alvin the Treacherous show up on an outcast ship and steal the unconscious Skrill with that classic "I have terrible plans" smile. Loaded with metal, Hiccup and Toothless become walking lightning rods in the storm and make a crash landing on Outcast Island, where the twins are already spying on Alvin and Dogger, forging a very shaky alliance. Mildew even doubts the Skrill's power and gets shocked so hard he forgets how to speak properly. Tough Nut's buff nut disguise works by some miracle of enemy gullibility, saving him from getting his legs chopped off by busting out an improvised poem at the buffet and handling Mildew's recognition with his fists, singing a comical song to cover up the beatdown. Knowing about the joint attack on Burke, Hiccup decides to free the Skrill to break the alliance, but Dogger beats him to the punch, taming the beast first. When Alvin snaps and starts a fight, Dogger blasts a lightning bolt into the ocean, sinking the Treacherous. Game over. Dogger, now absolute leader of both the Outcasts and the Berserkers, chases Toothless in a blind rage and forgets the #1 rule of electricity. A plasma blast on a wet cliff will fry the villain. The Skrill is still a problem though, so Hiccup tricks the beast into crashing head-on with its own reflection in an iceberg, causing an explosion that seals it back into its frozen prison, while Dogger vents his frustration by stabbing a drawing of the Night Fury. Gustav wants to be a dragon rider so badly that he sets the academy on fire, and Snotlout, with his usual tact, tells him there's only a spot open if someone kicks the bucket. Irony strikes hard. Snotlout starts seeing Nordic omens of his own death, hallucinates about Valhalla, and names Gustav his successor, until he finds out the omens were a prank by the twins and instantly kicks the kid out. But when Hiccup falls into one of Dogger's traps, Gustav and his monstrous nightmare hatchling Fanghook free Toothless and destroy the weapon. Hiccup gives him the made-up title of Junior Auxiliary Reserve Substitute Trainee and tells him to release the dragon. Gustav puts on a dramatic farewell, but the second Hiccup turns his back, he calls Fanghook right back. While patrolling for the Screaming Death, the gang stumbles upon an injured Skuldrin pinned under boulders. By some miracle of poor hygiene, it doesn't attack Roughnut. Her hair is so drenched in fish oil that the beast thinks she smells like its ocean home, and Scaldy is born. Meanwhile, Astrid shakes off Snotlout's advances by pretending to be an overly obsessed girlfriend, which makes the boy run for the hills instantly. When the order to retreat is given, Roughnut refuses to abandon the dragon. From up high, everyone watches Scaldy swim free, his splint tied together by her own blonde braids. A blizzard traps the riders in the academy, and boredom borders on madness, so Hiccup rescues traitor Johann and pays the price by having to listen to the guy talk for the entire flight. Burke turns into a ghost town. Speed Stingers, basically ice-covered velociraptors, have paralyzed the whole village, Stoic included. The plan to cage the Alpha backfires, and just as the pack is about to slaughter everyone, Snotlout, still half paralyzed, blows up the ice bridge and cuts off their path. One of Stoic's training sessions turns into a race between Astrid and Snotlout, who destroy the Great Hall and get detention in the Cabbage Patch. When their dragons fight over a patch of dirt, Hiccup forces the duo to swap mounts, and the shock therapy actually works. The real problem is the dragon root buried there, the evil version of catnip. With their beasts going feral, the two fight their way through, and Fishlegs yanks the plant out of the ground. Eelpox takes down Burke, and the twins turn into highly articulate scientists. Hiccup goes to fetch the cure-providing eel, but Toothless swallows a piece of one and loses his mind, turning into a paranoid red fireball shooting machine with no shot limit. They pin the Night Fury down using Meatlug's weight and shove the medicine down his throat until he regurgitates the eel. The village is cured, and the twins lose their genius, but not before inventing ice cream. A bizarre mist steals all the metal in Burke, including Macy, Toughnut's beloved mace, leaving him as devastated as a guy who just lost his dog. Toothless blasts the smoke away and reveals the thieves, smothering smoke breaths. The scrap metal Gobber bought from Johann's ship was actually a nest of hatchlings planted by Dogger to disarm the island before an invasion, a Lex Luthor-level master plan. With the fleet arriving, the riders rain wrenches, silverware, and spoons down on the ships. The swarm goes after the bait, and the armada dismantles itself. Dogger retreats, losing even his helmet, and Hiccup fills Johann's ship with the remaining scrap to take the little guys far away. Hiccup invents the Thunder Ear to detect the Screaming Death's arrival, but during the test, Stoic accidentally tunes into Gobber trash-talking him behind his back, basically a hot mic in the Viking Age. The gossip is cut short by a bizarre sound coming from the ocean, and father and son stumble upon 3 lost baby Thunderdrums, which Thornado, Stoic's dragon, instantly calms down. Stoic decides to leave them there, assuring Hiccup that the species is tough. But the next morning, Burke wakes up to an earthquake. The 3 have invaded the village, destroying everything like sugar-fueled toddlers running on pure chaos. Hiccup convinces his dad to train them as a battle squad. The twins twins name two of them Bing and Bam and try to call the third one Lloyd, because logic was never their strong suit until Fishlegs changes it to Boom.
Call me crazy, but I'm thinking there might be a more logical choice than Lloyd.
Like what?
Boom?
Oh yeah, I guess that could work.
The training is an absolute disaster. The hatchlings ignore commands, blast sonic roars right in Snotlout's face, and terrorize Stormfly. When an attempt to drop them off at Dragon Island ends with them getting attacked by wild dragons, Stoic makes the tough call and releases Tornado to raise Bing, Bam, and Boom. It's a heartbreaking goodbye, but exactly what a true leader and a father would do. During an ambush exercise, Snotlout ignores the retreat order to play hero and nearly gets Astrid killed, so Hiccup suspends him from the team. Instead of taking it on the chin, he grabs Hook Fang and flies off to a tiny rock island he dubs Snotland, exactly where the colossal Screaming Death decides to pop out of the ground. Knocked out and saved at the very last second, Snotlout wakes up in Berk by interrupting his own Viking funeral and drops a bombshell. The guy who saved his life was Alvin the Treacherous. Stoic wants nothing to do with redemption arcs and throws the ex-villain straight into the dungeon. Dagger sees the perfect opening, invades the arena with his berserkers, and plants Dragon Root. Within seconds, the riders' dragons are attacking each other like gladiators. Hiccup and Fishlegs are cornered, with Dagger demanding Toothless in exchange for their friends' lives, until Stoic and the warriors arrive to wreck house. To everyone's surprise, Alvin escapes and jumps into the fray on Berk's side, knocking out his former right-hand man, Savage. But in the chaos, Stoic gets accidentally knocked out by Meatlug, and Dagger improvises in the worst way possible. He takes the chief hostage and drags him to Outcast Island. Hiccup swears to rescue his dad, but the clock is ticking. The Screaming Death is still roaming around with Berk in its sights. Berk descends into chaos without Stoic. Snotlout tries to calm the crowd by lighting himself on fire with Hook Fang, a tactic that might actually be intimidating if he didn't end up sprinting around with a flaming backside looking for a bucket of water. Under the pressure of being interim leader, Hiccup finds out from Gobber that Alvin used to be his father's best friend before a strategic disagreement ruined everything. Then Fishlegs brings the worst news possible. The Screaming Death is heading straight for Berk, and Dagger sends word that if he doesn't get Toothless by nightfall, Stoic dies. Hiccup recruits Alvin to guide him through a secret underwater entrance to the prison. In the tunnels, they find Mildew, still loyal to Alvin, and secretly feeding the Screaming Death's mother. Hiccup has a stroke of genius. He sends a terrible terror with a letter ordering the riders to lure the monster to Outcast Island using the Dragon Root. In the arena, Dagger captures Toothless and reveals his master plan, turning him into a hat, because villains have their priorities. But before he can order the wardrobe change, the arena crumbles beneath the Whispering Deaths, and the riders arrive with the Screaming Death in tow. The creature almost swallows Fishlegs until Meatlug blasts gas straight into the monster's mouth, making it spit him out instantly. The plan works. The Screaming Death reunites with its mother and leaves in peace. Hiccup lifts Snotlout's suspension. Alvin and Stoic shake hands, leaving the past behind, and Hiccup heads home to help Snotlout unburn his butt. 3 years later, peace reigns, except for Dagger, who breaks out of prison with absurd ease and knocks out the guard who gave him the key, just because he hates traitors. Makes sense in his head. His goal, revenge on Hiccup. Back on Berk, adulthood is knocking. Snotlout tests weapons for Gobber, the twins play pranks in the name of Loki, Fishlegs has become a historian, and Astrid joined the guard, while only Hiccup and Toothless remain obsessed with mapping islands. Astrid gives it to him straight, telling him their world-exploring phase is over, but fate disagrees. Dagger steals Traitor Johann's ship and heads for the ship graveyard after a treasure map. Hiccup rounds up the team, secretly relieved to have the good old days back. At the graveyard, giant screaming eels attack, and the riders form a human chain so they don't fall into the sea. Astrid slips, and Hiccup and Toothless dive to save her at the last second. Inside the Reaper, he finds cages full of dragon bones and a mysterious cylinder that, like any good ancient artifact, triggers a cascade of deadly traps. On deck, Dagger is waiting with the rest of the team caged up. He demands the cylinder, bails, and even fires a catapult at the hull for good measure. The Reaper sinks, leaving Hiccup with an impossible choice: go after his enemy or save his friends. The choice is obvious. Hiccup lets Dagger go, picks the cage lock with his metal leg, and frees the team just in time for round 2 with the eels, then flies after the artifact and recovers the cylinder. Back on Berk, they name the thing the Dragon Eye, but it only manages to shoot a tranquilizer dart straight into Toughnut. However, Gobber notices that the scar on Gothi's arm is the exact shape of the keyhole. The tooth of the snow wraith that attacked her is the key. The team flies to Glacier Island and leaves Gobber as the substitute healer, which turns into one medical disaster after another. He cauterizes a Viking's wound to disinfect it, knocks the poor guy unconscious with a bucket of water, and then treats a stomachache by making the patient's hair grow. Pure chaos. On the island, the wraith attacks invisibly through the blizzard, tracking heat via infrared vision. Hiccup sets up snowmen and wood for Toothless to light up his bait. It works, until Snotlout gets offended that the beast attacked the statue that looked like him and orders Hookfang to retaliate, melting the ice ceiling down on top of everyone. Gothy loses her patience, whacks the dragon with her staff, and the wraith flees, leaving a tooth embedded in the wood. Back on Burke, the tooth fits, but nothing happens. It's only when Toothless lights the fire pit that the light shines through the gem and projects maps and holograms of unknown dragons onto the wall. Their world just got a whole lot bigger.
Whoa. This changes everything.
Hiccup presents the Dragon Eye to the council, buzzing with excitement, but politics is always a wet blanket. Spitelaut puts his foot down, wanting to either enjoy the 3 years of peace or hunt down Dogger. Stoic recognizes the value of peace, but knows his son was born to fly, so he gives his blessing. What Hiccup didn't expect was to look over and see all the riders ready to brave the great unknown. After hours of flying and a brutal lightning storm, they find a paradise island. Perfect, until a soothing melody starts playing and the camp wakes up completely empty, without a single dragon in sight. Toothless reappears in a panic and in a rush to pull Hiccup away, literally yanks his prosthetic leg off and drags it away. It's impossible not to laugh at the dragon's desperation. The rescue mission runs into a very angry wild Thunderdrum and their dragons trapped in a substance that looks like amber, the work of a death song which lures prey in with music just like the sirens of the Odyssey. The predator is fast, pinning down Toothless, the riders, and their dragons. Hiccup only escapes because Astrid shoves him out of the way at the last second. On his own, he improvises in the most ironic way possible. He teams up with the Thunderdrum, who is deaf from its own roars and therefore immune to the song. Riding it, he uses Hookfang's incendiary gel to melt the amber, frees everyone, helps the beast rescue its baby, and traps the death song in a cave. After the chaos, Hiccup even offers them the chance to back out, but the team refuses. The mission now is to find a home base, and choosing the location is left up to Snotlout. Between out-of-control boars and poisonous flowers, the team lands in a spot that's a little too peaceful. So peaceful that Toughnut gets paranoid. The argument over the base's design starts instantly. Snotlout wants an S shape, Astrid thinks about military tactics, Fishlegs designs a mudbath spa, and the twins insist on a boar pit. At night, Toughnut freaks out when he sees the silhouette of a colossal dragon. No one takes him seriously, but the crazy guy was right. Flying straight at the creature, they realize it isn't a single monster, but a swarm of night terrors in formation, with a little white dragon acting as the eye. After they free the leader, the tiny dragons scare off a pack of Changewings in the blink of an eye. Hiccup then merges everyone's ideas to create Dragon's Edge, boar pit included, and Roughnut loses a bet, having to swap clothes with her brother. Back on Burke, Fishlegs won't stop sneezing and scratching until Hiccup connects the dots. The guy has developed an allergy to his own dragon, which is pretty tragic for a Viking who spends his days cuddling the animal. The solution is hypnosis by Gothy, but before she can wake him up, Snotlout runs his mouth and jokes about turning his friend into a fearless, arrogant, and ruthless warrior. Hiccup shuts the idea down, but it's too late. The sweet nerd vanishes, and Thor Bonecrusher is born. He struts through Burke like an 80s action movie protagonist and even snaps Gothy's staff in half, preventing any reversal. With his ego through the roof, he decides he needs a weapon worthy of his greatness, and the axe he grabs from Gobber's workshop belongs to Stoic, who definitely does not like sharing his things. Scavenging through the wreckage of the Reaper, Dogger notices the Dragon Eye is missing. At the edge, peace is shattered by the arrival of a 16-year-old Gustav, with his lack of common sense fully intact, staring down Astrid and burning Fishlegs' plants. Banished to the corner, he digs through Hiccup's stuff, finds the eye, and, thinking he's in an Indiana Jones movie, drags his dragon into an unstable cave searching for treasure. After a heavy scolding, the kid runs away hurt, gets captured by Dogger, and hands over the artifact to save his own skin. But it was all an act. Inside the cave, he uses the eye's light to blind the villain and escapes. The treasure was a new lens, and Hiccup admits the kid was clever, just not loud enough to make him decide to move in permanently. Fireworms start burning down the edge, and the twins show up with a deed stone proving they own the island. Stoic confirms the document, finds it hilarious, and leaves. Snotlout suggests eliminating the two, a very Game of Thrones style of conflict resolution. But Hiccup bets they'll get tired of the hard work. He was wrong. The place becomes Thorstenton. They create a breathing tax, ban the letter S, and throw everyone in the dungeon, even Hiccup, for breaking the aerial speed limit. With the riders locked up, the island actually catches fire and their majesties beg for help. Their luck turns when the night terrors form a giant fireworm queen in the sky, and Hiccup leads this living drawing to a rocky island with the actual fireworms following their leader. In the end, Meatlug swallows the deed stone and turns it into lava. Anarchy and equality are restored. A Rumblehorn, a gigantic dragon, is turning the Edge's defenses into rubble, and Gobber shows up on the island revealing the real reason for his visit. He's hiding from Stoic, who has been impossible, micromanaging swords and even critiquing how the Elder plants seeds. The truth is, the chief misses his old dragon, Tornado. During the next attack, a structure collapses on top of Gobber, leaving the blacksmith as disoriented as a quarterback after a blindside tackle, completely convinced the dragon is his pet goat. When the beast charges at the delirious Gobber, Stoic interrupts the shot. The animal isn't attacking, it's growling to warn them about a colossal tsunami heading for the island. Together, they knock down a rock formation in the sea and break the wave. Stoic names his new ally Skullcrusher and makes a rare confession. He didn't just miss his dragon, he missed his son, too.
And by the way, son, I do miss you. A lot, in fact. All right, big fella, let's get back to work.
The twins, by some absolute miracle, build a perfectly functional watchtower, and when they bring the gang over to rub it in Hiccup's face, the tower is just gone. Stolen? Evaporated? Nobody has a clue. Meanwhile, Fishlegs plays with Meatlug's lava and the Dragon Eye and unlocks a map to Dark Deep, the ancestral home of the Gronkles, leaving so euphoric that he sings for the entire trip. But the place is no paradise. An absolute unit of a dragon, basically a living boulder, comes after them. Fishlegs names the beast the catastrophic Quaken right in the middle of their escape, because priorities. Snotlout decides to turn his friend into a ruthless warrior, but the second the Quaken shows up and he sees the actual size of the thing, he bails. Left behind, Fishlegs braces for impact, but the Quaken stops. The monster wasn't angry, it was scared. It just needed a hug. In the end, Snotlout still has the nerve to take the credit for it. A masked rider has been sinking ships in the area, and the riders are taking the blame. In the wreckage, they find a spine, and the Dragon Eye reveals the culprit. A Razor Whip. A lethal dragon with a very specific palate for sea slugs. Scouring islands for the beast's diet, they find a camp, split up, and are embarrassingly ambushed one by one. The twins fall from the sky. Astrid gets trapped in a cave, and Snotlout is run over by logs right in the middle of a bathroom break. Hiccup and Toothless escape and take down the target, and when the mask comes off, surprise, it's Heather. Out goes the scared girl, in comes the ruthless vigilante, now a heavy-hitting duo with the Razor Whip wind shear. Astrid thinks this new hardcore goth phase is awesome. Hiccup doesn't trust it one bit. At night, she locks the dragons in the base and tries to sneak away, but Hiccup follows her to Trader Johann and discovers the truth. The Berserkers destroyed her village and killed her family, and now she's on a John Wick-style mission against Dagger. Driven by revenge, she attacks the fleet alone and falls into a dragon-proof chain trap, being dragged onto the enemy ship just as Hiccup arrives to witness the disaster. Hiccup and Toothless dive straight into the line of fire. Since the chains are dragon-proof, he uses his brain and destroys the wooden winches, convincing Heather that revenge isn't worth her dragon's life. On the flight back, she confesses that the family Dagger killed wasn't her biological one. All she has left of her real father is an ancient horn. Back at camp, there's even some gossip, with Heather admitting she thinks Fishlegs is cute, while Astrid nearly chokes and changes the subject, swearing that she and Hiccup are just friends. Sure, Hiccup recognizes his own tribe's crest on the horn, flies to Burke, questions Stoic, and has a brief, very Luke and Leia moment of panic, thinking Heather might be his long-lost sister. In his absence, Heather manipulates the team with guilt, boards the ship, captures Dagger, and going against everything she promised Astrid, orders Windshear to finish him right there. At that exact second, Hiccup lands and drops the biggest bombshell possible. The crest belongs to Oswald the Agreeable, meaning Dagger is Heather's biological brother. The revelation hits like a ton of bricks. Dagger breaks free and with that maniacal smile invites his little sister into the family business. She refuses and leaves in shock, needing time to process that her archenemy is her own blood, leaving Astrid upset but somewhat consoled told that she still has Hiccup. To test the Dragonfly 1, Hiccup does the obvious. He throws himself off a towering cliff and hopes gravity is kind. The suit actually works for a few moments, followed by several face-first freefalls toward death with last millisecond rescues by Toothless. Then, a distress call leads the group to a baby speed stinger with an injured leg. Snotlout suggests the standard real-world survival tactic, turn your back and walk away, but Hiccup insists on playing the heroic vet. The twins hold the paralyzing tail while mocking the creature and challenging it to a fight, a brilliant tactic that gets Toughnut stung from the chest up. Back at base, Fishlegs notices webbing between the little guy's toes. These land creatures can now run on water, and the entire pack is coming across the ocean to get the baby back. Surrounded in the dead of night, Snotlout has a moment of genuine altruism and tries to sacrifice himself, but the baby turns against its own kind to defend the exact human who wanted to leave him in the woods. Seizing the opening, Hiccup puts on the 2.0 flight suit and takes the enemy leader out of commission in mid-air. The Alpha retreats, and Hiccup says goodbye to the little guy, making sure he reaches his true family. Hookfang hears a distant roar in the middle of an aerial game, loses control, and crashes into the trees. He vanishes, is found in a remote cave, and flames up to keep his friend away. The next day, he refuses to eat, wrecks everything, and runs back to the same spot. This high school-level rebellion has an explanation: a female monstrous nightmare. It wasn't madness, it was pure hormones. With his pride wounded, Snotlout demands that he pick a side, and the beast goes with his instinct, blowing fire in the human's direction and cutting ties right there. Convinced his life as a dragon rider is over, he packs his bags but stops by to say a formal goodbye, only to find a massacre. Hookfang beaten down, defenseless eggs in the corner, and a colossal titan wing about to annihilate everything. Acting on an unthinkable impulse, Snotlout draws his sword and charges on foot to face the monster, only surviving being turned to ash because the team lands just in time. Since fighting head-on would be tactical suicide, the reconciled duo lures the giant into the training dome, where the claustrophobic space favors the smaller dragon, and they unload relentless fire until the titan wing hits the mat.
Now that's what I call domination! Boom!
While the twins try to turn the night terrors into circus pets, ignoring the fact that they are the island's alarm system, the message arrives: Burke is under siege. Dogger pulled off a flawless hit and run and vanished, and macabre irony dictated that Astrid's family home was the one turned into a pile of rubble. Traumatized, she swears to never leave Dragon's Edge again and builds the most chaotic squad ever seen by human eyes from scratch. Rocking a ruthless drill sergeant hat straight out of a war movie, she punishes every slight mistake with push-ups and zero room for crying. Hiccup warns her that this is just a comfortable excuse to fail the recruits and prolong a fear-driven stay, but the message bounces right off her shield, and the whole attack was a smokescreen. Dogger triangulated the riders' isolated base. With the guards acting like playful puppies, the ships secure the perimeter and lock the allies in the arena, until Hiccup escapes through the chaos and calls Burke for backup. Astrid breaks her vow, flies to the rescue, and screams at the new squad not to even think about joining the carnage, an order they ignore as the ragtag group breaks Dogger's line so devastatingly that the berserkers scatter across the docks. Instead of the promised punishments, the recruits are officially promoted to the A-team, and Astrid, cured of the ghost of losing everything back home, returns to patrolling the seas of her home island. Astrid and Stormfly are enjoying the morning high above when the good weather ends. Ships with the dragon hunters crest on the sails. Riker orders them to fire. A dragon root poisoned arrow hits Stormfly, and Astrid plummets into the ocean only to helplessly watch her dragon be dragged away by the enemy. After hours adrift, exhausted and sinking, she is saved at the last second by Hiccup, who dives in and pulls her up with Toothless's help. The relieved hug when she opens her eyes says everything he doesn't need to say out loud. At base, Snotlout, with his usual luck, steps on a dragon root arrowhead, and the Changewing, quietly captured by Toughnut, spits acid right onto his helmet. Hiccup uses his friend's melting helmet to project the map showing Riker's port. The rescue plan involves infiltrating with Meatlug, who is immune to dragon root, with Fishlegs pretending she's been shot down. A setup worthy of a heist movie, except Riker already knew about the immunity. It was a trap all along, and the entire team team ends up in a cell. To crown the defeat, the door opens. Heather walks in, followed by Dagur, a family alliance. The betrayal hits hard, and the former ally makes a point of leaving the riders drowning in their own misery. Heather escorts Astrid to Riker as rudely as possible, and during the interrogation, Astrid bluffs. She says the Dragon Eye is heavily guarded back at base by the fearsome Captain Gustav, the best lie she can come up with to prevent an immediate invasion, and incredibly, it works for a while. Outside, Hiccup and Snotlout have evaded capture and fly to a whispering death-infested island to find molted screaming death scales to forge armor. Snotlout rightfully panics. They come face to face with the giant monster, and only escape because the mother dragon shoos her son away. On the ship, Riker forces the dragons to work, but Astrid doesn't sit around. She memorizes the patrols, knocks out 2 guards with the cell door, and uses the key Roughnut sneakily stole until Heather corners her, and everyone is sent back to swab the deck. The turning point comes from the sky. Hiccup and Snotlout appear with dragons clad in scale armor, bouncing off arrows as if they were toys. Astrid and Toughnut start beating hunters with deck brooms. Heather trips in the axe duel and hits her head. Hookfang destroys the siege engines in the nick of time, and Stormfly escapes the hold so the whole team can take flight. Riker is left behind empty-handed, rehearsing how to report the failure to his mysterious boss, Vigo. The tension takes a break for Toughnut's sheer insanity. He shows up covered in leaves, swearing he was attacked by a lethal creature, and Gobber adds fuel to the fire by telling the legend of the Lycanwing, the dragon version of a werewolf. Naturally, Toughnut fully embraces the idea. He eats raw fish from a bucket, gives away his belongings, and leaves his own sister to Hiccup in his will. Meanwhile, they discover the monster is just a myth, and Toughnut nearly throws himself off a cliff to avoid devouring his friends, until Snotlout shows up battered from the forest, revealing the culprit behind the bite, a perfectly normal wolf, which lunges at them 3 seconds later.
Snotlout, where's the wolf? Huh?
Spitelout arrives with the kind of family mission that gives you a headache. Snotlout is going to be the axe-bearer for the union between the Jorgensens and the Hoffersons. Mid-flight, the walking disaster magnet drops the heirloom, which ends up stuck in a rock that stands up, a metal-covered dragon dubbed the Armorwing. At base, Fishlegs tries to explain a Viking wedding to the twins, and Toughnut ends up Vegas-style officiating a marriage between Fishlegs and Roughnut, who immediately starts redecorating his hut. The big guy only breathes a sigh of relief when the officiant confesses he never actually finished his certification. Hiccup saves the twins from an avalanche and bends his metal leg in the process, so Barf and Belch decide they owe him a life debt, like Chewbacca with Han Solo, except it's a 2-headed dragon that destroys his hut trying to warm his bed. To get rid of his scaly shadows, Hiccup fakes dangerous situations that all go wrong, and when Snotlout pushes his teasing too far, he takes a single punch and loses a few teeth. Then Snotlout is actually kidnapped by Dagur and Riker, who want the Dragon Eye lenses, and Barf and Belch fill the ship with explosive gas. Debt paid. Testing Gronkle iron armor on Toothless under a barrage of paint arrows seemed like peak stress at base, until Astrid arrives with gossip from trader Johan. Heather, Riker, and the hunters are buying up all the black market cold weather gear to hunt a snow wraith and use its tooth as the key to the Dragon Eye. The team flies to the frozen island and in the middle of a blizzard, while the twins use Snotlout as a human heater in a bizarre survival sandwich. Astrid gets separated and runs right into Heather. The plot twist: Heather hasn't turned evil. She's acting as a double agent in deep cover, and asks Astrid to keep it a secret because Hiccup's overprotective instinct would ruin months of espionage. Soon after, Riker corners the gang in an ice cave. A hidden hunter almost hits Hiccup with an arrow, and Heather acts quickly from the shadows, using her dragon's spines to neutralize the sniper without breaking her cover. The villain orders the entrance blown up to bury the riders alive. However, Toughnut wakes up 3 hibernating snow wraiths inside. The panicking beasts dig tunnels, and the team hitches a ride to the surface. In the aerial pursuit, Hiccup lines up the perfect shot on Riker, Heather jumps in front to protect her boss, and Astrid is forced to scream over the blizzard that she is on their side. Back at base, Hiccup is hurt that he was kept in the dark, but Astrid drops the final puzzle piece. Riker isn't the big boss. The true leader of the Hunter Empire is Vigo Grimborn, and Heather, risking her life among enemy lines, is the only chance to drag him into the light. Astrid is losing her patience. Coordinating base defenses with the Thorsten twins is the equivalent of running a chaotic kindergarten, and Hiccup doesn't seem bothered by it at all. Worse, he gets a distress call from Johann and simply takes off with Snotlout and Fishlegs, leaving Astrid to babysit two hyperactive teens building a watchtower. The pressure cooker explodes, and the three of them get into a massive argument. On the trader's ship, the attackers aren't hunters. They are wild, out-of-control dragons, and one of them just grabs Fishlegs and takes him to an uncharted island. When the crew gets there braced for the worst, they find him befriending a wild Gronkle after saving it from choking, noticing that all those scars prove they've crossed paths with hunters before. Meanwhile, back at base, Ruffnut is captured by actual hunters, and the one who warns Toughnut of the danger is Chicken. Yes, the pet bird. Desperate, he runs to ask Astrid for help, forcing her to swallow her pride, forgive their fights, and accept that the only chance to save the base and his sister is Toughnut's natural talent for crafting absurd pranks. Astrid hides the Dragon Eye under some rocks, which is Toughnut's cue to shine with a Home Alone-style defense. And wouldn't you know, it actually works? He sinks two hunter ships right off the bat. On the Wild Dragon Island, the rescue goes off the rails. It was all a trap to isolate the team from the base, and Johann, trying to hide on Meatlug's back, makes the dragon yelp upon hearing Fishlegs' voice. The disguise is blown, and Fishlegs, with his giant heart, decides to stay behind to make sure the hunters don't hurt the animals anymore. On the other side, Heather juggles to keep her cover. She pretends to take Ruffnut to execution, ties her to a tree with intentionally loose ropes, and the girl misses the clearest sign in the universe. Heather literally has to throw a spine to cut the rope and whisper instructions for her to take wind shear and flee. In return, Ruffnut tackles her, steals the dragon, and flies off in the wrong direction. Night falls, and the invasion turns into all-out war. Toughnut's plans run dry, the Night Terrors panic, and Riker is about to finish him off in hand-to-hand combat. That's when Hiccup arrives, having earned the Wild Dragon's trust with his flight suit, to show he's not a threat, bringing the whole pack with him. The riders in this new scaly army descend from the sky, wiping the hunters off the map. Riker is hit by Toothless, the enemies retreat, and Heather makes a point of punching Ruffnut for being so clumsy during the rescue. The next day, peace is restored as they escort the dragons back home. It's Loki Day. Fishlegs takes a beating from the twins' pranks, and when he spots a two-headed sea shocker on the beach, no one believes him. To prove he's not crazy, he seals off the lagoon with rocks and traps the beast inside, but a cornered dragon panics, and the noise attracts starving Scaldrons. In sheer desperation, he dives in and encourages the sea shocker to touch its two heads together. The resulting shockwave sends the predators flying. Astrid wraps up the holiday by moving the twins' hut to an isolated rock in the middle of the ocean. The sea shocker does not forgive and does not forget. It breaks through its icy prison and goes out thirsty for revenge against Hiccup and Toothless, riding the storms all the way to Berk. Spitelaut gets a shock that leaves him speaking alien gibberish, and Snotlout takes the opportunity to put words in his father's mouth. When the beast falls into the hands of the dragon hunters, Hiccup uses Astrid's axe to set it free for good, because keeping the creature imprisoned would make them just like the hunters. A mutual bow is exchanged before it disappears into the clouds, and it even leaves a parting gift in the form of a lightning bolt to Spitelaut's chest, giving him his voice back at the exact right moment to yell at Snotlout. The tables turn on the paranoia front. Riker notices that Hiccup has been freeing dragons way too easily, and concludes they have a mole. To maintain her cover, Heather attacks Snotlout and the twins mid-air, resulting in a bizarre dragon swap where Toughnut catches Hookfang, forms an instant bond, and flat-out refuses to give the mount back. At the enemy camp, Riker presses Heather. Dagger actually defends his little sister, and right after, gives her a weird hug, jokingly warning her that he knows she isn't entirely honest. And then we meet Vigo, cold, intimidating, and obsessed with telling stories about his grandfather and the Maces and Talons board game. He wastes no time and tasks Heather specifically with hunting down the traitor and capturing a flightmare. Back at Dragon's Edge, the maturity levels are enviable. Snotlout and Toughnut declare eternal friendship and found an exclusive club in an isolated cave, while Ruffnut, highly offended at being left out, steals the Dragon Eye just to play shadow puppets. When Hiccup and Astrid set up the ambush with Heather, they discover an entire fleet waiting. Vigo orchestrated the whole thing to test the girl and easily overpowers her. The twins try to lure the glowing dragon, get drenched in algae, and become targets themselves. And in the end, the hunters take the Flightmare, Heather, and Windshear. Hiccup chases after Vigo, but the man has vanished like a ghost. Fishlegs reports that the enemies escaped through a fog bank and that Dragon's Edge was invaded and ransacked. But irony saves the day, because the Dragoneye was in Roughnut's hands and escaped the looters. On Vigo's abandoned ship, Hiccup finds a Maces and Talons board with a piece sliced in half. A clear message that he knows Heather is the traitor, and that her execution will be the end of the game. Challenge accepted, and the plan is absurd. Infiltrate the base by flying through the fire tornadoes of 4 captured Typhumarangs. Meanwhile, Dagger is tired of being treated as a pawn, breaks ties with Vigo, knocks out the guards, and frees Heather and her dragon without looking back. But Vigo doesn't mess around. The cell Hiccup thinks holds Heather actually contains the hunter leader himself. A guard activates the mechanism, and the Flightmare fires its paralyzing mist at Hiccup and Toothless. Frozen on the ground, he is forced to watch Vigo rip the Dragoneye from his pocket and walk away, screaming in pure frustration. Astrid reminds him that the artifact is useless without the Snowwraith tooth, but Vigo plays on another level. He reveals to Riker an emergency override built into it from its creation, a filament that only melts under the light of a Flightmare. Exposed to the mist and lit by the fire of a tiny terrible terror, the gears turn, the light projects, and Vigo now has all the secrets, routes, and dragon species in the world, including the Night Fury. Hiccup decides to play the lone hero, gives Astrid the slip at the stables, and goes on a recon mission with just Toothless. Big mistake. The hunter's ghost ship was a trap. Toothless takes a dragon root poisoned arrow to the tail, and the two crash land on an island. Hiding in a cave with his suffering dragon, Hiccup is rescued by the most unlikely of saviors, Dagger, the resident psychopath, now giving off an extreme survival show vibe and swearing he's changed after what happened with Heather. Hiccup trusts him about as much as you'd trust a Nigerian prince email, but the guy knows the recipe for the antidote and even takes an arrow meant for him. The antidote makes Toothless freak out, they get captured, and Dagger runs off, leaving Hiccup behind, only to reappear riding Toothless and wrecking everything. They blow up the ship, and Dagger steals a boat, yelling that he's going after Heather. While the riders reload the catapult, the twins decide to carve their own faces into the mountain, Mount Rushmore style. The piece is short-lived. The Fireworm Queen shows up completely scratched up, asking for help against the Cavern Crasher, the worst squatter possible, who evicts dragons from their homes and leaves a trail of highly flammable slime. The slime traps everyone in a ring of fire, the queen saves the group, and Snotlout proceeds alone with her, discovering deep in the hive that she is protecting dozens of eggs and, in a rare moment of not being insufferable, helps her care for the babies. When the invader reaches the nest, the queen and Hookfang torch the slime off its body and force it into retreat. Snotlout takes all the credit and gets his own face added to the twins' monument. Fishlegs dreams of being respected as a leader, but wakes up to an explosion. Snotlout and the twins wasting monstrous nightmare gel for fun and laughing in his face. Wandering in frustration, he finds a cave with ancient markings and a mysterious sword, shows it to Hiccup, and only gets scolded for not keeping the team under control.
And what?
And they didn't. And now we've got fires to put out all around the base and an emptied out emergency supply of monstrous nightmare gel.
He returns to the cave, falls down a deeper tunnel, and finds albino night terrors, who, after being fed, crown him on a stone throne. The perfect fan club reaches a misery level of obsession when they block the exit and hold him hostage. Meatlug escapes and drags Hiccup to the rescue, but the team gets trapped in a cave-in with Toothless out of shots. Then comes the glory. Knowing the beasts hate noise, Fishlegs bangs the axes together, cuts the rope blocking the sun, and uses the sword to reflect the light. Hiccup swallows his pride and admits that even he couldn't control those three on a good day. Snotlout decides to play blacksmith and almost burns the place down, and Stoic shows up, not to scold Hiccup, but to complain about Spitelaut, who has been missing for a month setting up a supply depot. Hiccup and Snotlout catch the irony immediately. Their father's feud is identical to theirs. On the mapped island, they find a suspicious building with a yak tied to a catapult, and of course, Snotlout messes with something he shouldn't and traps everyone in a giant net. A Slitherwing attacks, Spitelaut appears with his dragon, and the two stubborn dads bicker amid the chaos, like a Viking version of grumpy old men. The dads fall in combat, leaving the rescue to their sons. Worse, the beast's blasts were flares, and several Slitherwings surround the group. Only then do Stoic and Spitelaut swallow their pride and agree to move the depot, though not without Stoic sneaking back real quick to rip the sign with Spitelaut's name off the door. The tranquility lasts for exactly 0 seconds. On a morning patrol, Astrid finds an apparently abandoned fishing boat, climbs down to the lower deck, and a pale greenish hand grabs her arm. She runs away horrified, warning that the entire crew was rotting, and the nightmare had only just begun, because the scratch brought with it the Scourge of Odin, a lethal plague that has wiped out Vikings in the past. The only cure is the saliva of a buffalord, a species everyone thought was extinct. With Astrid passing out from weakness, the riders track the beast down to a remote island and find a bizarrely docile, almost apathetic dragon. They try to transport it tied up. Terrible idea. Away from home, the gentle giant puffs up, shoots explosive spikes everywhere, and returns to its pasture as calm as if nothing had happened. They have no choice but to bring Astrid to the island, but the saliva alone doesn't work. It only clicks when Hiccup notices the twins chewing on the local vegetation. The cure is mixing the drool with the grass the dragon grazes on. Just when they finally get it right, Vigo captures the creature, cementing himself as an absurdly cold villain by revealing that he spread the disease on that boat and sacrificed his own men on purpose, knowing Astrid would be infected and that Hiccup would hunt down the rare dragon to save her. A masterclass in psychopathic chess. Cornered, Hiccup makes a tense deal. Vigo takes the beast as long as they get the cure first. Astrid is saved, the villain sets sail with his prize, and completely fails to account for the Buffalord's geographical stress. Away from its grass, the dragon freaks out, tears the ship apart, and calmly flies back to its pasture. The team is exhausted from forging Gronkle iron non-stop, but Hiccup is fully paranoid about Vigo's next moves, and only agrees to a vacation when Astrid and Fishlegs disguise the request as a strategic sandstone expedition. On the deserted island, everyone relaxes in a lagoon, and the twins prepare a fish so salty it disgusts even the dragons. Then the well-deserved rest turns into a survival nightmare. Fishlegs wakes up at dawn to a drooling meat lug, growling like a wild monster, and soon all the dragons chew through their saddles and start hunting their riders through the forest. The group accuses Hiccup of frying the beast's sanity from overworking them and runs for their lives. Back at the base, meanwhile, a comedy of errors unfolds. Gobber thinks Skullcrusher ate Toughnut's chicken and tries to paint a normal chicken to cover up the murder. Cornered in a cave with even Toothless freaking out, Toughnut throws his filthy salt-covered dinner gear at the dragon, and miraculously, it works. The beasts weren't crazy. They were covered in parasites called Grimora, picked up in the freshwater lagoon, and salt is their kryptonite. The rescue plan basically turns into throwing dragons into the sea, with Hiccup diving headfirst with a furious Toothless straight into the ocean. Upon returning, he admits he pushed them too hard, and the original chicken shows up pecking around, ending the avian farce. Hiccup and Astrid find it incredibly suspicious to see the twins and Snotlout randomly training, chasing a terrible terror straight to Fishleg's hut. It turns out he's been receiving secret messages, and the sender is none other than Heather. Only the letters reveal a depressed Heather, struggling to accept that she is Dogger's biological sister and terrified of carrying the same madness in her genes. The group invites her to Dragon's Edge to help with the deadly Natter migration and assess if she's ready to become an official rider. The reunion with Astrid is friendly, but in action, nothing flows. Windshear is skittish and attacks Toughnut mid-migration. Hiccup attempts formation flight training, which goes well until Toothless gives that classic look of superiority that irritates the Razor Whip. She freaks out, knocks Hiccup off, and he has to use his flight suit to save Toothless from a fatal dive. Frustrated, Heather decides to leave, thinking her own dragon is too dangerous for the group, but Fishlegs won't let the girl slip away. When the hunters capture Hookfang with steel cables, the two appear in the sky riding each other's dragons. The genius realization is that Windshear fiercely protects Heather no matter what dragon she is riding. They destroy the ships and save the day. Heather decides to stay for good, but peace is short-lived. A message arrives from Dogger asking for help to find his sister. The villain wants a family reunion, only now, Heather has a whole team to watch her back. Riker is having audience issues at the underground dragon fighting arena. His champion always wins, and it's killed the thrill of the bets. Coincidentally, Hiccup and Snotlout invade a hunter base at this exact moment, and in a brilliant Snotlout maneuver, meaning ruining everything, he pulls a lever and triggers a sleeping gas trap. By the time the other riders arrive, Hiccup, Toothless, and the caged dragons have already been taken. Heather uses her knowledge of the hunter underworld to track her friends, and Astrid stages a lethal interrogation with a captured guard just to panic the guy into sending a terrible terror for help. A flying messenger, they follow right to the target. At the arena, things heat up when Toothless is thrown into the cage, and Hiccup, being the good protagonist he is, asks him to only pin the opponent instead of hurting him. Riker demands blood. The arena master promises a bigger show and unleashes a triple strike. The Night Fury gains the upper hand and once again chooses to spare his opponent, creating a bond with him in the middle of the ring. And that's exactly when the cavalry arrives, destroys the arena, and frees the dragons. The triple strike, traumatized by years of captivity, has nowhere to go and follows them to the edge. Dubbed by Tough Nut, at the peak of his creativity, as Sleuther, the riders intercept a hunter's shipment and bring an egg back to the edge. When the shell cracks, out comes a baby death song that simply won't shut up and screams for hours on end. Tough Nut names the creature Garfilyorg, and the only thing capable of calming the beast is, by some inexplicable miracle, his pet chicken clucking a tune. The group takes turns singing so they don't lose their minds, but the moment the music stops, the hatchling spits amber on everyone. Exhausted like sleep-deprived new parents, they decide to return the kid to the adult death song on Melody Island. But Garf wakes up on the way. The noise attracts the adult, who traps almost everyone in a sea of amber and corners Hiccup and Toothless. Hiccup realizes the strategic flaw. The adult hates the songs they were singing, meaning the riders have terrible musical taste for the species. They test new rhythms until Snotlout's melody pleases the beast, but Ruffnut messes up the lyrics and provokes the monster's wrath, and it's Garf who saves the day, perfectly mimicking the right song and instantly bonding with the adult, family reunited. Hiccup then pulls out his newest invention, a flaming sword named Inferno, and shatters the amber with the fiery blade, while Astrid announces that no one will see Hiccup for the rest of the week. Hiccup equips Toothless with a stealth tail and leads a perfect ambush on a hunter convoy, which, instead of caged dragons, is loaded with marble blocks. A stampede of dragons fleeing a nearby island catches their attention, and the twins immediately crash their dragon on the descent because subtlety was never their strong suit. Down below, there's a quarry, and the hunters aren't using pickaxes. They're using catastrophic Quakens as literal wrecking balls, controlled by hammer beats. Fishlegs, with his usual bleeding heart, tries to play Dragon Whisperer and almost gets turned into a pancake. Meanwhile, Astrid, Heather, and Snotlout discover what all that marble is for. Vigo is building a dragon fireproof fortress. The mining destabilizes the entire island, and a Quaken falls into a crevice along with Hiccup and Toothless. Realizing the other dragon is hesitating so as not to hurt its fallen partner, Fishlegs grabs a hammer and instead of striking hard, taps the ground softly. The compassion works. The dragon rescues Hiccup, and with the big guys on their side, the riders march on the fortress. Marble might be immune to fire, but it's definitely not immune to wrecking ball dragons. They tear the place down, Fishlegs releases the Quakens to live in peace on another island, and Vigo gets yet another reason to hate Hiccup. Hiccup returns to his hut to find none other than Dagur, who hasn't come to fight. He just wants to borrow a dragon to search for Heather across the sea. Hiccup hides the lunatic on the outskirts, an extremely wise decision since Heather has made it clear her current life mission is to attack her brother. Dagur gets a wild Gronkle named Shattermaster, and the training is a disaster. Hiccup's prosthetic leg breaks, he accidentally mounts Toothless, falls, and within seconds is surrounded by all the furious riders.
Why'd you do me like that, bud?
What have you done with Hiccup?
Fishlegs takes over the training and surprisingly does well, until the cover is blown when Heather returns early from patrol and goes all out against her brother, throwing their father's murder in his face and accusing him of being Vigo's spy. Hurt, Dagur decides to leave, but spots the war table and warns them that the planned attack on the shipyard is an obvious trap. Astrid wants no advice from an enemy and locks the guy in a cell. Dagur escapes with Shattermaster, and Hiccup, fearing a betrayal, accelerates the attack. But at the shipyard, they discover he didn't go to betray them. He went to be the bait. Dagur triggers Vigo's trap alone, facing an entire fleet in a suicidal frontal assault to protect the riders, and is overwhelmed, seemingly killed in the process. Back at the base, the mood is heavy, and Heather finds a letter from him in her room. A valuable tip about an upcoming Vigo auction, a confession that he made up the story about killing his own father just to keep the tribe's respect, and a plea for forgiveness. The villain everyone hated just delivered the biggest sacrifice of the series. Vigo organizes an ultra-exclusive dragon auction, and Hiccup decides the best way to sabotage it is to infiltrate as a billionaire buyer, which requires Burke's gold. Stoic hates the idea, but yields on the condition that Gobber goes along to watch the fortune. The plan is pure Viking Ocean's 11. Snotlout becomes Sir Ulgerthorpe, an unbearable rich kid, with Gobber as his abused lackey, and to sell the character he even slaps him in the face in front of Vigo and Riker, while the merchant Johan smuggles the rest of the group in the ship's false bottom. On the island, Gobber bonds with a lazy hot purple named Grump, whom Riker insists on kicking and humiliating, and while Snotlout distracts the big bosses in the tent, he steals the cargo manifest. The infiltration goes perfectly well until it goes completely wrong. The riders are captured one by one. Vigo confiscates the gold, takes Toothless, and locks everyone in a dragon-proof cell, with the auction reaching its climax featuring the Night Fury as the main attraction. What Vigo didn't expect was Grump, tired of being beaten and wanting to save his new friend, showing up at the cells and simply tearing the iron bars off with his teeth. The dragons crash the auction. Chaos ensues. Gobber and Riker brawl, and Hiccup corners Vigo, who, being the strategist he is, throws the chest of gold into the ocean. Hiccup dives to save the village's money and lets the villain escape, only to open the chest on the surface and find that Vigo swapped everything for rocks. They lost Burke's fortune but ruined Vigo's empire and saved dozens of dragons, and Gobber promises to take the blame with Stoic before delivering, with a smile on his face, a well-deserved slap to Snotlout to end the day. The riders are in full attack mode, freeing dragons left and right, when a little letter arrives from Vigo setting up a meeting on a rock in the middle of nowhere. He offers a truce and divides the map with a red line, but Hiccup catches on immediately. The guy just wants the riders away from a border island. Arriving there, the reception is a dart to the neck, and they wake up tied up in front of Queen Mala, who is convinced they are hunters sent to steal her great protector, and the signed map in Hiccup's pocket is the nail in the coffin. Condemned, he gets thrown into a pit with speed stingers, and only escapes because Toothless doesn't care about rules, and dives in after his chief. Seeing that loyalty, Mala realizes they are innocent and shows them the village. The Great Protector is an Eruptodon that eats the volcano's lava and stops the island from melting. Everything is great until the cave turns up empty and Hiccup finds an arrow on the ground. Vigo used the riders as bait, took the dragon quietly, and the blame falls right into Hiccup's lap with Mala's sword at his throat. With a blade at his throat, Hiccup does what he does best, talks his way out of it, convinces Mala that he was also played for a fool by Vigo, and brokers an alliance. Impressed, she decides to fly with the warrior from distant lands mentioned in the prophecy, inflating the guy's ego to planetary levels until Astrid threatens to behead him with an axe. Mala starts to feel sick. Through an almost mystical connection, she senses that the Eruptodon is starving to death. Hiccup pieces it together. Vigo took the creature to the dormant volcano at the edge to force an eruption and wipe the base off the map. The race against time ends with the base saved and the Queen finally accepting the riders as true allies. Peace is short-lived when Cousin Gruffnut shows up at the edge, basically Toughnut, but with a hidden agenda and heavy debts to the hunters. He knocks out his cousin, ties the poor guy up in an isolated cave, and assumes his identity. A classic soap opera evil twin swap, but with Vikings. The plan to steal a dragon stalls a chicken, the island's best security system, and the fatal mistake comes when the fake volunteers for patrol duty, because Toughnut never, under any circumstances, volunteers to work. The real one befriends a night terror, frees himself, and proves who he is by listing all the times he almost killed Hiccup. Up in the air, Ruffnut had already figured out the farce. The guy complimented her and didn't let her hold the mace, and her brother would never be such a decent human being. A brawl breaks out on the back of the hideous Zippleback until the real Toughnut flies in and knocks the phony onto the hunter ship. Being family, the twins actually rescue the traitor, but dump him near a Rumblehorn's cave. After all, blood ties have their limits.
It was a giant eye!
Hiccup is exploring an island when he's ambushed by a bunch of crazies, and Toothless, Astrid, and Stormfly arrive to clean up the mess. A wanted poster falls to the ground and the mystery is instantly solved. Vigo put a bounty on his head, paying with the gold stolen from Burke. Ignoring common sense, he goes to Burke's 400th anniversary celebration, where paranoia hits hard, and he attacks some weird guys only to discover they were Sven's uncles. A classic embarrassment. In the dead of night, he pays the price. He's kidnapped from his own bed, and wakes up tied to a ship with the mercenary brothers Amos and Berthel. From there, he becomes a hot potato. Savage steals the bounty and rips off his metal leg. Throck sedates Savage on Queen Mala's orders, and a masked hunter knocks them both out and delivers the trophy to Riker, who pays with a bag of rocks. In the scuffle, the mask falls off. It's Krogan, the guy from the auction. The two roll off a cliff. Krogan holds onto the metal leg, and Hiccup simply releases the socket. The riders arrive just in time. Stoic knocks Riker out with a massive punch, and on the flight back, Hiccup promises to stop keeping secrets from his dad. Snotlout decides it's time to shine and establish himself as the next leader of the riders, but his strategy involves ignoring orders and putting everyone in danger, and the team returns from a disastrous clash covered in bruises with zero patience. Grounded, he throws the dragon root arrows off a cliff instead of burning them, and even fakes an enemy attack just to test the team. Hiccup tries diplomacy and gives him command of a mission to sabotage enemy supplies, but the test is a fiasco. Nervous, he confuses Hookfang, who hurls a barrel of explosive gel right at Hiccup. Humiliated, Snotlout isolates himself until Hookfang throws him off that exact same cliff where the arrows have sprouted in the sun. Then he connects the dots. The camouflage tarps cast a shadow, meaning there are no crops there. It's a trap. The two tear through the skies, burn the camouflage to reveal the ballistas, and Snotlout steps in front of a giant arrow to save Hiccup, falling unconscious. He wakes up a hero and even guides the team to the real plantation. Leadership, it turns out, is more about taking an arrow for your friends than barking orders. The black market for weapons gets too small. The hunters have bought the entire stock, and a hooded figure warns Queen Mala to get out of there. Disguised, Hiccup and Heather infiltrate, but a metal leg isn't exactly the best accessory for blending in. Toothless fires a plasma blast and their cover is blown. During the escape through the port comes the shock. Dagger is alive, walking freely among the hunters. Captured, he puts on an Oscar-worthy performance, faking amnesia and running away until Heather pins him down and he spills the truth. It was all a disguise to rescue Skullcrusher. Dagger then leads a suicide attack on the fleet, frees the enslaved Gronkles, draws all the ships toward himself, and swears to return to his sister before vanishing into the horizon. On the other side of the world, Snotlout survives a walk over lava and a maze of giant eels, and the final trial requires him to take an arrow for Mala. Shaking in his boots, he accepts, but it was all theater. Mala catches the arrow mid-air and shoots a wink at Hiccup, declaring Snotlout unfit for the throne, much to everyone's relief. Tired of getting beaten, Vigo responds with a trade blockade worthy of a James Bond villain, a chained submariner at the bottom of the Baldur Strait, creating giant whirlpools that swallow merchant ships and cut off Burke's supplies, which is already operating on rations alone. To break the chains without drowning, Hiccup improvises the first Viking submarine in history using Gobber's cauldron and changewing acid. The window cracks during the test, but time is up and he forces his way down anyway. The hunters wake the beast by throwing rocks. The crane is destroyed, and Toothless dives in after him. With water rising inside the capsule, Hiccup accepts the end, and the dragon stays right there, loyal to the very last second, until the submariner itself, now free of the final chain, brings the contraption back to the surface. Hiccup wakes up coughing water. Toothless roars a thank you to the sea monster, and Vigo flees, towed by Skrills in a little boat. The midnight sun leaves Burke in continuous daylight and absolutely no one is sleeping. Astrid is in a bizarre euphoria. Snotlout has zero mood control and the twins are ironically doing great because they already operated on a different frequency from reality anyway. Hiccup goes for a fly, hears a dragon distress call, and of course goes to investigate. It was a trap by a new species that spits fireballs that spread like lava and acts with pure military tactics. Then the leader appears, a colossal green monster that doesn't fly alone, the smaller ones attached to its wings, forming something that looks very much like a B-52 bomber loaded with missiles. Bizarre, genius, and lethal. Toothless puts on a survival show, dives toward a lake, spins to shake off the hitchhikers, shoots plasma into the water to create a smokescreen, and navigates by echolocation while the leader loses its vision and plummets. Back at the edge, the place is deserted. The dragons, exhausted by their riders' lunatic behavior, threw everyone into a trapdoor pit to force them to sleep. Hiccup barely has time to complain that he's the only one working before Toothless pushes him down the hole too. Dagger reappears out of nowhere with a gift, the exact location of the gold Vigo stole from Burke. In exchange, he just wants a cut of the cash to fund the search for his father, and his logic is flawless. If he didn't kill Oswald and Heather didn't either, the old man is alive somewhere. It's hard to argue with that. The vault, busted open true berserker style, is empty. Hiccup falls into a trap and Vigo guarantees with that know-it-all tone that his defenses are impenetrable. They are dragon fireproof ships, so Dagger goes for the most insane tactic possible. Windshear grabs Skullcrusher by the tail and hurls him at the fleet like a living bowling ball. With their friends free, Hiccup pieces it together. Pickaxe means the gold was melted into the walls of the Viking ruins, not buried. And the mission closes with a farewell. Heather leaves with Dogger to find their father, and Fishlegs even gets a kiss on the cheek. A distress call from Queen Mala interrupts Hiccup and Fishlegs' genius nerd session. The Eruptodon has laid its only egg and is too exhausted to take it to the sacred nest before the lava pool seals the volcano's entrance. On the first descent, Toothless's prosthetic tail almost melts in a geyser. On the second, squeezed onto Meatlug, a cloud of red night terrors swallows the group and steals the egg. Outside, Astrid and Throck descend in a diving bell coated in Eruptodon saliva until the chain can't take the heat and snaps. That's when Hiccup and Fishlegs finally figure out the cave painting. The night terrors don't want to make an omelet. They are the egg's natural carriers. Throck decides to stay behind to save his queen, but the mother Eruptodon miraculously recovers her strength and lifts the bell to the surface, while down below the lava covers the cave and the egg pulses safely. The twins test dragon-proof chains using Macy, Tough Nut's beloved mace. The chains remain intact. The mace turns to dust. The morning is so dramatic that Rough Nut drags her brother to the northern markets in the middle of the night, ignoring Hiccup's orders. And there, relying on sister tuition, the two invent a story that they stole the weapon after eliminating none other than Hiccup himself, a blatant lie that turns them into instant legends at the bar. But a hunter takes the newly repaired mace, and by following the ship, they land straight into Vigo's secret base, just in time for the speech about Project Shellfire. Rough Nut is captured, and Tough Nut, for the first time in his life, chooses to steal tactical intel instead of saving his mace. When Vigo traps the riders in the arena and opens the floodgates to drown everyone, comes the moment of glory. He throws Macy into the gears. The weapon is shredded, but it buys the seconds needed for the dragons to focus their fire on the same chain link. A Viking funeral is held for the mace, and the secret diagrams are handed over, except Vigo is already sailing triumphantly on a colossal metal warship, carried on the back of a giant aquatic dragon. A brutal storm hits the edge, and Astrid goes into captain mode, locking everything down, until lightning sets the stables on fire. She goes in to release the trapped dragons. A lightning bolt strikes inches from her, and the flash leaves her completely blind. The next day, the dragons are gone, and she refuses to sit around in the dark while Stormfly is lost out there. Hiccup tries to forbid it, but it's Astrid we're talking about. She mounts Toothless, and the two set off. Meanwhile, the rest of the team lives a comedy of errors with swapped dragons, with Snotlout taking a beating from Barf and Belch, and the twins stressing Meatlug out so much she throws up lava. They find Stormfly, but a wild triple strike appears out of nowhere, and Hiccup forces Astrid to hide. Consumed by feeling useless, she hears him tell her the truth. They've been through everything together, and blind or not, he will never leave her side. There's that heavy, almost kiss tension, and the triple strike returns to ruin the romance. When the riders arrive, mounted on the wrong dragons, and get thrashed, Astrid gets tired of the sidelines. Using only her hearing, she maps the beast pattern, guides Stormfly's shots, and then calmly walks across the battlefield, bangs two spears together to disorient the predator, reaches out her hand, and tames the dragon in the dark. Gothy treats her eyes, and her vision returns. But the main event is in the late afternoon. Sitting at the edge of the cliff, Hiccup confesses he didn't kiss her because he wanted the perfect moment. She looks at the sunset, says that this moment seems perfect, and the two finally kiss. Hiccup has a solid plan to raid Vigo's base, take down the Shellfire project, and recover the Dragon Eye. The confidence is so high that Astrid pulls him aside, only for Fishlegs to show up at the worst possible moment, and she makes it clear their relationship stays a secret so as not to mess up the group dynamic. The invasion finds the base abandoned and destroyed, and Hiccup's frustrated kick at a table reveals a trapdoor beneath the game board. Guess who's down there, all beaten up? Vigo himself.
Whoa! Hold your fire.
My dear Hiccup, I am overjoyed to see you.
He reveals that Riker staged a mutiny, stole the Shellfire, and took over the Hunters, offering the Dragon Eye in exchange for stopping his brother. They take Vigo as a prisoner to Queen Mala. Blue fireballs rain down, and amid the chaos, he conveniently escapes. On Outcast Island, Riker welcomes them with a white flag and flips the script. Vigo is the crazy one, and he'll only hand over the eye if they surrender his brother. While the crew rescues civilians during the attack on the Berserkers, Hiccup and Astrid uncover the truth about the Shellfire. It's not just a ship. It's a colossal vessel strapped to the back of a giant Tidal-class dragon that dives and disappears. At night, Vigo emerges from the shadows and proves Riker's lie by the simple fact that his brother didn't have the eye to show. He hands over the artifact and dictates the terms. To stop the morning attack, they are going to work together. With Vigo sheltered in the stables and the twins thinking the villain might actually be good company, there's no time for debate. Riker's fleet is heading for the edge, and the team decides to face them head-on, right there to spare Burke. In the middle of the Shellfire attack, they discover that a terrified Snotlout left Vigo locked in a burning building. Hiccup, ever the protagonist with an unwavering moral compass, dives into the fire to save him, stating that letting him die would make him no better than the hunters. The two go after the Shellfire together, and the villain takes the opportunity to get inside Hiccup's head, poking at his feelings for Astrid and the burden of leading a war right before pulling a knife. Astrid flies in at the exact right moment, but Vigo reveals he never wanted to kill Hiccup. He wanted blood in the water to attract the Submaripper, and it works. The aquatic giant creates a massive whirlpool that swallows Riker's entire fleet. But Vigo wouldn't be Vigo without one last trick up his sleeve. He appears riding Stormfly with Astrid as a hostage at the edge of the caldera, the girl's life, or the Dragon Eye. Hiccup throws the artifact over Vigo's head straight into the magma, and in his desperate attempt to grab the object, the ledge crumbles, sending Vigo plunging to his death at the bottom of the volcano. The shock having passed, the two agree to maintain professionalism in combat, calmly share a kiss, and the team finally arrives, understanding the weird vibe. Everything is resolved, at least until the volcano decides to erupt. 3 months later, the volcano proves it wasn't messing around. Tremors devastate the base, and Snotlout raises the flag to pack their bags. But Hiccup refuses to leave until the island is stable for the wild dragons. The saving recipe is Gronkle Iron and Deathsong Amber, so the team splits up to hunt for the ingredients. On an overly quiet Melody Island, Hiccup and Astrid find a fully grown Garf riddled with hunter arrows. With Vigo and Riker out of the picture, the math is simple and terrifying. Someone else has taken over the fleet. It's Krogan, who shows off a disturbing ability to tame a Slitherwing through sheer brute force. In the Dark Deep, the twins use Snotlout as bait, because of course they would, and steal the Gronkles. The volcano is stabilized, Garf survives by a thread, and Hiccup tears up the escape plan. No one abandons the edge. The team is staying to fight. Johan summons the riders to the northern markets with a sinister rumor about the Curse of Tears, which makes merchants and treasures vanish without a trace, while Astrid desperately hunts for a 6-month anniversary gift and ends up buying a very sketchy treasure map. Hiccup and Snotlout are robbed. The ground literally swallows them both, and they fall into a lair worthy of a pirate nightmare. Gold piled high with human skeletons, and Snotlout improvising a prosthetic with a dead man's bone. The culprit is a sandbuster, which turns its fire into glass, until Hiccup figures out that sunlight burns the beast and builds a solar ray cage. The group deciphers the map and rescues everyone. Hiccup gives Astrid the medallion Stoic had given Valka, but the romantic mood dies when Snotlout shows up with a heavy sword from the lair, Vigo Grimborn's. The riders accept Dagur's invitation for a graduation ceremony on Berserker Island and notice 2 weird details. The dragons are inexplicably agitated over the village, and Savage, an old enemy, is casually living there. The remote stable turns out to be a trap, with a mysterious gas weakening the beasts and locking them all inside. The graduation ceremony for the insufferable Gustav ends in a coup d'etat, with Savage imprisoning Dagur and taking over the island. Without dragons, Gustav tries to play the fearless prodigy, but fear gets the better of him and he ends up in the same cell as the former chief, leaving it up to Snotlout to outsmart the guards and free them both single-handedly. Dagur spills the truth. There was no graduation. Stoic just wanted a vacation from Gustav. Using brute force, they storm Savage's headquarters, who still tries to use Heather as a hostage before getting beaten. The island's hero trophy is finally awarded, engraved as Snotnut, and ends its journey at the bottom of the ocean. Snotlout uses Astrid's axe to clean Hookfang's claws, says something totally out of line, and flees the edge in the dead of night to escape her wrath, flying straight into a storm that knocks him into the ocean with a lightning strike. He wakes up thinking he's reached Valhalla, but his saviors are the Wing Maidens, an isolated tribe of female warriors led by Atali. Even with the feasts and care, he remains an arrogant idiot. Upon hearing about a sacred stew on an island forbidden to men, his paranoid mind jumps to the obvious conclusion: cannibals, and he's the secret ingredient. He throws himself off a cliff and is caught mid-air by Atali, who literally has wings on her back.
No, you can't do this! I'm not edible! I'd be tough! Gamey! Wait, are you flying?
Astrid, Heather, and Ruffnut infiltrate the island and clear up the misunderstanding. The wings are blind baby razor whips, and the mothers become aggressive in the presence of any male. Astrid only hands over the key to his chains after he promises to respect women, but she messes up the geography and sends him north, exactly where the nesting grounds are. After running for his life from furious females and being saved by a hare, he offers a sincere apology by the campfire, and the warriors seal an alliance with the riders. The veteran Eruptodon can no longer hold back the lava for the defenders of the wing. Its baby takes over the heavy lifting at the last second, and it becomes clear the old guardian has clocked out after 40 years and is heading to Vanaheim, the dragon sanctuary, to enjoy his retirement. Mala warns that no human has ever set foot there. Hiccup completely agrees, but the twins hear sacred and forbidden rule, and immediately translate it as VIP invitation. Tracking them, the group runs into giant sentinel statues that wake up and are none too pleased with tourists. Cornered, they realize from the tomb carvings that Vanaheim has room for every species except the Night Fury. The Guardians don't know Toothless. Hiccup escapes and figures out the trick. The sentinels are blind and rely on scent, so anyone smelling like the island belongs there. He returns with a gross but brilliant plan, rubbing native fruits all over everyone. And it works until Snotlout loses his patience with a sentinel sniffing his neck. In the ensuing chaos, the old Eruptodon performs his final heroic act by distracting the guards. Toothless destroys Toughnut's notebook so the secret dies there, and Hiccup returns home with a new perspective on a secret project. In a shady tavern, Krogan meets a hooded old acquaintance to propose an alliance. But before the reveal, chaos knocks on the rider's door. Outcasts arrive disguised in women's clothing, warning that Alvin has been captured and the ransom isn't gold, but a very specific type of fish. Only Thor Bonecrusher can fix this, they claim, and Hiccup shoots down the idea, recalling the disaster from last time. As the master of terrible decisions, Snotlout hypnotizes his friend in secret. Fishlegs makes demands before going under, to keep loving Meatlug, a 3-clap trigger, and to be less heroic. But Snotlout severely messes up the dosage, turning Thor into a selfish villain who betrays the outcasts, sells everyone out, and takes over the gang. Snotlout ends up hanging upside down next to Alvin until he manages to clap 3 times. It seems to fail, but the hypnosis was actually broken. The real Fishlegs stayed in character to fool the thugs and orchestrated a breakout from the inside out. Far away, the hooded man turns around, revealing his face burned by lava. Vigo Grimborn survived. The vibe at Dragon's Edge is fractured. Hiccup and Astrid have entered that classic couple phase where they forget the rest of the world exists, ghosting the annual dragon count to fly off alone in search of an essential oil recommended by Johann the Merchant. While the lovebirds enjoy the moonlight, the Edge wakes up to the apocalypse, a giant swarm of Singetails, ridden and controlled by hunters. Snotlout surprisingly steps up as leader and tries to hold down the fort, but the disadvantage is brutal, and Fishlegs is shot down mid-bombardment. Vigo wants him alive. Krogan prefers the lethal route and chases him on a colossal dragon until Fishlegs ducks into the caves and reunites with the albino Night Terror, who helps him lose everyone in the tunnels. By the time the couple finally shows up, the base is in ruins, leaving no choice but to retreat and surrender their home. Snotlout throws the truth in Hiccup's face about abandoning the team, and the leader swallows his pride. They still manage to save Fishlegs with a clutch attack from Meatlug milliseconds before his execution. Before fleeing for good, Hiccup has Toothless blow up his own hut, preferring to destroy his secret project rather than let it fall into Krogan's hands. Taking refuge on Queen Mala's island, the whole drama turns into a joke when the twins reveal they looted the project before the invasion. Hiccup is building his own dragon eye. Meanwhile, back at the volcano of the Conquered Edge, Vigo is just feet away from fishing the original eye out of the lava. Without the Edge, the gang camps out on Caldera Cay trying to keep their spirits up, while Vigo uses Hiccup's own diving bell to fish out the eye and takes a lava blast to the face, earning that classic Batman's Two-Face villain look. Krogan assures him that his 12 dragon riders on Singetails can get the job done, and it's not long before they attack the Cay. Amid the chaos, Throck saves Ruffnut from being crushed, bumps his head, and passes out, and she, never missing a chance to be the absolute worst, convinces the guy that she saved him, instantly gaining a devoted bodyguard. The enemies even use their own dragons as meat shields, and since Hiccup refuses to hurt a dragon, he orders everyone to retreat through the fog straight to Berk. The reception isn't welcoming. Stoic, traumatized by Drago Bloodfist's invasions, declares a state of war and warns that no enemy dragon will be spared, and even Astrid thinks the time for lethal decisions has come. Feeling like no one understands his side, Hiccup flies with Toothless to Storehouse Island to study a Singetail up close. The idea is noble, the execution fails fast. His friendly approach only provokes the beast's wrath, which swats Toothless away with a single strike and leaves Hiccup sprawling on the ground, about to become barbecue. The fire barrels toward Hiccup, but he is pulled away at the last second by none other than Gobber, who was also studying the Singetails nearby, albeit with a much more vengeful motive after they destroyed his storehouse. At the edge, Vigo recovers the eye, but the device is more busted than a cheap radio. Krogan mocks him, and Vigo locks the door to fix it himself. On Burke, Stoic isn't interested in diplomacy, and gathers the fleet and the riders for a massive preemptive strike. However, on the island, Hiccup and Gobber discover two crucial weaknesses. Singetails cannot fly straight up, and they respond to a distress signal made of fire. The battle is already raging at night, and the riders are losing when the duo arrives and lights the signal in the forest with a captured dragon. It works perfectly. The dragons abandon their abusive riders mid-air to rescue their comrade, and the last hunter tries to follow Toothless upwards until his dragon loses momentum and plummets.
Come on, beast.
Come on. Singetails do not like altitude.
Left without an army, Vigo and Krogan flee on the same dragon, and Astrid takes the blow of seeing the man alive and well with the eye under his arm. With the edge reclaimed, Hiccup announces he is building his own version of the eye, but the meeting is interrupted by a bizarre scene. Throck, who discovered Roughnut's lies and fell in love anyway, is massaging her foot while Toughnut massages Throck's foot. Snotlout can only run to the beach and scream at the ocean, trying to erase the image from his memory. They catch Garf trying to make a snack out of another dragon on the island and decide it's time to find a new zip code for the baby. Only the chosen island comes with venomous slitherwings as a bonus, and Stormfly ends up trapped in an amber cocoon. Astrid, ignoring all sense of self-preservation, punches a slitherwing to extract the toxin. In the end, the amber was for protection, not an attack, and the dragon wasn't poisoned. She was in deep depression, thinking Garf had died for her. Throck lands, announcing he's come to marry Roughnut, using a caveman-level approach that leaves Astrid so mad she nearly settles the matter with her axe. He resorts to bushes and poetry, but makes the fatal mistake of saying her brother isn't included in the package. Toughnut, thinking he's in the way, does what any sitcom twin would do. He fakes his own death, and his devastated sister adopts the dragon that supposedly ate him. After a mid-air rescue, Throck swallows his pride and leaves alone. The hunt for his lost father takes its toll. Dagger has already thrown in the towel, but Heather remains obsessed, and it's the worried brother who knocks on Hiccup's door asking for help. A drawing of a sentinel appears in Oswald's journal, pointing to one logical destination, Vanaheim. Hiccup, Dagger, and Fishlegs take flight, while the rest of the team stays behind to deal with a much more chaotic priority, the disappearance of Toughnut's pet chicken, who ultimately just ran off to start a new life with a local rooster and several chicks. The arrival is brutal. The Sentinels sniff out the dragons from afar and force a less than elegant landing. Amid the confusion, the trio realizes a flock of strangers has infiltrated the island. The Grim Gnashers, predators that fly there just to prey on sick dragons. They find Oswald's house, built from the timbers of a berserker ship, and Dagger freezes as the fear of the truth weighs on him. He opens the door to confirm the worst. They bury Oswald right there, and Dagger's grief mixes with the guilt of not arriving sooner, until Fishlegs translates the writings on the walls and reveals that the old man spent his final years as a true hero, protecting the ailing dragons from the Grim Gnashers' cowardly attacks. A box with 2 letters brings relief, and inspired by his father's final words of pride, Dagger charges at the flock. His bravery instantly earns the respect of the Sentinels, who help drive out the invaders and even bow to the riders. But rest is a luxury. Fishlegs finds the blueprint for a new Dragon Eye lens, and far away, Johan injects a dose of false hope into Heather, swearing that a contact saw Oswald alive. Snotlout is sent to the northern markets to buy chicken feed, and with a negotiating talent that would make any merchant laugh, he trades his own armor and backpack for a sack of premium food. But he's not the only familiar face there. Heather and Johan are at the same market looking for a man who supposedly has information about Oswald. As expected, the informant is a fake, and the meeting is an ambush set by Krogan. In Burke, Dagger finds out about his sister's trip, and his blood runs cold. Knowing his father is dead, he and Hiccup fly out at top speed, aware she is flying straight into a trap. The escape turns into a nightmare. Windshear is caught in a net, and Krogan makes his offer on top of an isolated rock in the ocean. The dragon's life for the Dragon Eye lens. Johann, playing the voice of reason, insists a piece of metal isn't worth the beast's life, and with no way out, Heather hands it over. But a deal with Krogan means nothing. He takes the lens and kicks the cage straight into the sea. Heather realizes too late the key is fake, but just as breath begins to run out, Dagur tears through the sky to rescue his sister, while Toothless shatters the cage with a plasma blast. The real turning point happens out of their sight. At the Hunters' headquarters, Vigo and Krogan test the stolen lens, and the person who walks into the room as their partner is Johann. The good-natured merchant drops the mask, complaining about the years he spent kissing Stoic's boots and faking friendship with Hiccup just to gain their trust. His endgame isn't money or power, it's finding the King of Dragons. The Dragon Eye doesn't show the king because it's missing lenses, and Johann already has a perfectly manipulative plan to steal Hiccup's. He convinces the boy to go to the northern markets to get gems for the new projector. The twins tag along and inadvertently become the saving grace of the trip, since their obsession with buying costume jewelry for Chicken throws Johann off balance. In a dark alley, hunters ambush the group and take Johann hostage. Hiccup pretends to hand over the lenses. The twins show up at the exact right time and disarm everyone, and right then and there, the boy starts to suspect the merchant's little theatrical act. Meanwhile, Dagur tries to recover a lens he lost in his childhood to the island's former bully, Anson, now a clumsy fisherman who will only return the artifact if Dagur, Snotlout, and Fishlegs help him hunt the legendary Thunderfish. Spoiler, it's not a fish, it's a Scaldron that spits boiling water, and Anson uses the lens itself to reflect the sun, blind the beast, save Dagur, and become the island's hero.
You had it all along.
Back to the main mission, Hiccup and Johann descend alone into the Sandbuster's cave. Thinking the boy is vulnerable, Johann pulls a dagger and delivers a big villain monologue, revealing he manipulated everyone from the start. But Hiccup isn't an idiot. He had already put the pieces together during the market ambush and set a trap, handing over a pouch that only contained one of Toughnut's necklaces. Toothless accidentally wakes the dragon in the cave with a blast. Chaos ensues. Johann sneaks away, and Hiccup returns home with the lenses safe. Putting the three pieces together in the new projector, a map lights up. The race for the King of Dragons has truly begun. Johann's betrayal hits Stoic like a sledgehammer, and the Burke chief's response is to burn everything that came from the merchant. Food, supplies, even Elder Gothi's medicines. Extreme scorched earth policy. He sets off alone for Willowbark, with Hiccup and Toothless glued to the clouds, and ignores his son's tactical warnings, uprooting an entire tree just to get the bark. In Burke, the new merchants chosen by Gobber draw weapons out of nowhere. It's Krogan's trap, locking the riders in the Great Hall and cornering the dragons in the arena. Father and son only stop arguing when they realize everyone was selling the exact same fish, the diet of Krogan's dragons, and they fly back at top speed. Toothless dive bombs like a missile, throwing the anti-dragon ballista into the ocean, and the wild dragons whose islands were burned earlier show up in a flock, thirsty for revenge, driving Krogan's forces away. The twins spend the whole day chewing pure willow bark, thinking it was an exotic snack donated by Dagur. Hiccup and Snotlout fly to the Wing Maidens to spread the warning about Johann, and young Minden, sidelined by Atali in the rearguard, immediately hits it off with Snotlout, because complaining about a boss who doesn't recognize your talent is practically his official sport. When mysterious fires start in the west, she throws all defenses over there and falls right for the distraction. The hunters attack the east and nearly knock Atali out of the sky. Minden realizes the real target is a Dragon Eye lens hidden on the island, lies to Hiccup, and drags Snotlout along to fix her own mess in secret. Far away, the twins mediate a debate between Dagur and Mala with absurdly dangerous trust exercises that work way too well, a deadly Viking version of a blind date. In the counterattack, Snotlout becomes bait in the sky, Minden frees Hiccup and Toothless, and the Wing Maidens release their newborn Razor Whips, who latch onto Krogan's goons and carry them far away. Fishlegs discovers a skeleton in the family closet, and not figuratively. His ancestors were the Loyal Order of Ingerman, hunters who nearly drove the Dramillions to extinction. Having an existential crisis, he flees in the middle of the night to Dramillion Island and, as any highly mature person would do, leaves the twins as substitute teachers for the Explorer kids, with Astrid hot on his trail. There, the first Dramillion goes straight for him, which makes total sense, since his helmet is an exact replica of his ancestors' hunting gear. When he finally gets the message and throws the helmet away, he earns the beast's trust. breaks the chains with the combined fire of Stormfly and Meatlug, and the Dramillions themselves storm the base and melt the ancestor statue. At the edge, the kids reappear, revealing they are his nieces and nephews, and to prove they absorb the twins' chaotic teaching methods, they blow up Snotlout's hut with hideous Zippleback gas. The smoke from the hut has barely cleared, and the twins already have another priority, their birthday, which brings Cousin Gruffnut and the infamous Thorsten family initiation test. With a twisted detail in the rules, only one can be recognized as a true member. They refuse to compete so they won't be separated. But Gruffnut is a master of manipulation and, with a couple of well-placed lies, turns the island into a Viking version of Survivor. They steal Speed Stinger venom, paralyze Changewings for their camouflage skins, and break into a Titan Wing hideous Zippleback's nest for the chest. It's right in front of the prize that reality hits them. Ambition destroyed the unbreakable partnership they had. Both try to forfeit the win for the other and obviously are caught by the giant dragon, running desperately through the cave to avoid becoming barbecue. The chest only holds rocks and potatoes. Neither passes because they both finished, and a real evaluator shows up to inform them that Gruffnut never passed the test himself. The sly cousin, already sailing away, opens a false bottom in the chest and reveals his true target all along, a dragon eye lens.
Worthless junk. Do all this for nothing but junk. Come down here and make up this whole induction.
The danger at the edge is now a serious commitment. Dagur and Mala arrive announcing their engagement with a romantic intensity that makes Snotlout ask out loud why Hiccup and Astrid aren't like that. Astrid gets the hint and puts on her betrothal necklace, but Hiccup embodies the oblivious boyfriend and spends the day blind to the jewelry, until he takes one look at the armor wing and instantly spots the dragon eye lens stuck to its armor. Astrid returns the necklace and throws it in his face that she feels invisible. Then Krogan attacks, and cornered in a cave, Hiccup realizes he can't formulate a single plan without her. In the air, he drops the lens and lets Krogan take it to save Dagur and the dragon. Back at the edge, he admits he took her presence for granted and delivers an absolute "I love you" with a kiss that resets any doubts, while Dagur, Mala, and Fishlegs awkwardly slip away to forge iron. On Wing Maiden Island, Atali presents the transition where the Razor Whip hatchlings choose their partners, Harry Potter's Sorting Hat, but with lethal flying reptiles. The last hatchling ignores Atali and runs straight to Ruffnut, and without a bond, the creature will die. What follows is a complete farce, with Toughnut chewing slugs and imitating birds while Atali concludes that Ruffnut is a natural prodigy. The lie falls apart during the test flight, but hunters ambush the island. Atali is thrown off a cliff and instinct kicks in. Ruffnut and Wingnut dive together to save her. She becomes a Wing Maiden, returns the dragon, and chooses her real family, the Dragon Riders. Behind the scenes, the classic betrayal. Krogan and Johan decide Vigo is no longer of use and leave him trapped in a cave to die. Far away, Hiccup and Astrid's rare picnic is ruined by a fake message from Stoic, and Hiccup goes to investigate alone, only to come face to face with Vigo, flaming sword in hand but with no will to fight. What he really wants is help, and to secure the alliance, he plays dirty, making Hiccup believe he poisoned Toothless. With no way out, Hiccup agrees to attack Johan's base, and the fake betrayal orchestrated inside the cave spirals out of control. Vigo takes several arrows. Here's where the tone shifts. He reveals the poison was a bluff and explains that a monstrous nightmare saved him when the cave collapsed, changing his view on dragons. Knowing his time is up, he stays behind with the Skrill, holding off Johan's army while Hiccup escapes, and the twins show up at the last second with a massive explosion. Back at the edge, in silence, Hiccup knocks over a piece on the Maces and Talons board. Respect for an enemy who died as an ally. Fishlegs and Meatlug accidentally injure a Singetail, and the dragon delivers the clue. Traces of Death Song Amber. Hiccup puts the pieces together quickly. Krogan is using the adult Death Song as a giant siren to attract Singetails. Astrid insists on bringing Garf along, and the decision goes wrong in record time. The baby sees his adoptive father chained up, breaks formation, and becomes a hostage too. The rescue using monstrous nightmare gel works, but the freed Singetails freak out and the riders get cornered in a cave. Salvation comes from the least expected place. Fishlegs discovers they are stealing eggs to create an army, uses one as bait, and lures a cavern crasher to dig an escape tunnel, with a surprisingly useful Snotlout leading the monster away. The group bursts out, obliterates the defenses, and frees Garf's father. The Dragonflyers ambush Stoic and Skullcrusher's Night Patrol in Burke, and the damage is done. Father and dragon are severely injured. Swallowed by guilt, Hiccup refuses to take the lead and isolates himself in the Great Hall until he explodes. It's all his fault for shooting Toothless years years ago. On the cliff, Astrid asks the golden question, and the narrative throws us into an alternate reality where he misses the shot. Even so, Toothless gets tangled in the net on his own. Hiccup can't bring himself to kill him. The two save each other from a whispering death, and Stoic witnesses their bravery and ends the war. Hiccup still loses his leg, Toothless still gets a tail prosthetic. The universe basically course corrects. He finally forgives himself, but the peace is short-lived. Astrid comes running. Heather has been injured and the Flyers have invaded Vanaheim. Heather can barely stand when she arrives in Berk, and Hiccup finds himself torn between caring for his father or defending the sacred dragon graveyard, until Stoic himself wakes up for a brief moment and gives him the push, with Alvin and the Outcasts taking over the Chief's guard. Vanaheim is up in flames and the riders capture a Flyer who, thanks to the twins' relentless tactics, earns the nickname Mr. Murderous Pile of Yak Dung and spills everything. The Flyers think the giant skull belongs to the King of Dragons and have already reported to Johann. In the middle of the storm, Snotlout gets struck by lightning and yells that his metal armor attracts electricity, the classic useless complaint that becomes the perfect plan, and Hiccup fries the enemies by luring them into the center of the storm. The victory seems complete, topped off with a dragon eye lens found in Oswald's cave, until Johann mocks Krogan's failure and shows off his own new lens, procured by none other than Gruffnut, who is tied up in a cage. With the 5 lenses united, the projection reveals a Titan-winged Dramillion that controls the minds of other reptiles, basically a scaly winged Professor X. Spitelaut brings the worst possible news.
Look at the Titan Wing in relation to the other dragons on the wall. It's bigger than this monstrous nightmare right next to it. This must mean that the giant skeletal remains on Vanaheim belong to another...
Stoic is fading and the council is demanding Hiccup become chief, but the boy puts his foot down and the riders fly to Dramillion Island just in time to catch the Armada landing. The Titan Wing comes out of camouflage like a tank, absorbing dragon root arrows until Johann brings it down with a harpoon, and Hiccup even has to drop the fight to rescue Snotlout and the twins sinking on a ship. But at night, they find the half-dead Titan floating. Johann discarded it because it isn't the King of Dragons. Taken to the Defenders of the Wing, the beast fires its unique flame. Hiccup places the eye in front of the fire, and the true location appears. Berserker Island, where aboard Dagger and Heather have just looked up to see the entire fleet covering the horizon. The invasion of Berserker Island kicks the door down. Krogan and Johann send the fleet in full force, but Dagger, showing surprising coldness, orders the catapults to open fire. Then the bizarre detail happens. The Singetails simply refuse to cross the island's border and scatter in panic because the King of Dragons is down below, and its presence terrifies the others. Hiccup and the riders use the chaos to ambush the Air Force, and Ruffnut, out of nowhere, completely nails Johann's strategy, predicting a 2-flank attack. Who would have thought? Astrid takes over the surface battle after one last kiss, while Hiccup dives into the caves after the villains. Down below, Johann and Krogan come face to face with the king, which is actually a colossal bewilderbeast, and she does not wake up in a good mood. They try to dominate the beast with spears. Spoiler, it goes horribly wrong. Hiccup discovers the king is a queen protecting her egg, and the insane fight explodes on the edge of the abyss. Krogan flees with the egg hunted down by Toothless, and when Johann raises his spear for the final strike, the bewilderbeast rises from the depths and freezes the traitor solid. End of the line for the merchant. Outside, her distress call becomes the show's Avengers Assemble moment. All the wild dragons the riders have ever helped tear through the skies, and Krogan even catches a nice tail slap before being executed by his true boss, Drago Bloodfist. The egg is safely delivered. Dagger and Mala get married. Stoic recovers, and Hiccup destroys both Dragon Eyes so no one else can play God. With peace restored, the riders fly back to the only place they belong, Berk.